All right. Episode 9, Beard in the Bookie. Host tonight, Josh Hiltner. And to my left here is the esteemed book, Dan Siegel. It's just the two of us again tonight. How you doing?
What's up, Joshy? I'll say, watching a lot of baseball,
Can
hockey
you hear me?
starting. I hear you. I hear you. I'll say.
Yeah,
We
man.
got all kinds. I'll say
Okay,
it's an
good.
exciting night.
You,
We got
we got a little delay
baseball, we got
just to start
hockey,
out.
football, all kinds of things bouncing around.
Yeah, man. For sure. So, since you brought it up, we're just going to go right into it. Changing it up. We're going to talk about hockey. First time on this podcast, first time this year we've been able to talk hockey. So, kind of how I want to run this tonight. I mean, the season's starting off tonight. Tampa Bay Lightning raising that banner at home. Got a lot of going on. I don't want to get too in depth. I don't feel like we need to go through our like who's going to win, who's not going to win. Let's just talk about like what we're excited for with the season tonight. Like from the start of the season, what are we looking forward to? What are some things that we can get excited about going forward?
Well, I mean, I am the bookie, so I am going to drop some bets during this segment. But like for instance, okay, if you get an itch in a couple of hours, I would take the Kraken puck line. Just throwing that out there. I originally would have said Kraken money line, but they got 5 guys out with COVID, so I don't know how drastically that will alter things. But as far as what I'm looking forward to this season, I think especially in the Eastern Conference, you're going to get a little bit of the changing of guard. Obviously, the Lightning are still there at the top, but like the team they're playing tonight, the Penguins, like tonight, they have no Crosby and no Malkin. I don't know when Malkin will come back. Crosby has been hurt a lot in the past couple of seasons. I don't think the Penguins are the Penguins that people remember. The dynasty era is far gone. And, the game started, so I couldn't get what the lines were. But I'm a guy looking at like Penguins to not make the playoffs, Penguins under point total. I don't think the Penguins are going to be that great this season. So, I think you have a lot of young up-and-coming teams, especially in the Metropolitan Division. Another team I think might have a down year is the Capitals. Ovechkin is hurt. He probably won't play tomorrow night. But, I mean, the Rangers have a good young core to go along with Panarin's and Zibanejad. I think they will be better this year. I think the Flyers, if Carter Hart gets himself figured out, they'll be better this year. The Islanders are still really good. The Devils are young and up and coming. So I think a lot of the teams that we're used to seeing in the East as far as like the definites, while you'll still have that top three probably of Tampa, Boston, and the Islanders, I think that middle will be, a little bit of new blood. In the West, I think obviously everybody's excited to see the Kraken. The last time we had an expansion team, Vegas, ended up going to a Stanley Cup final. I don't know how realistic that is for the Kraken, but, especially considering, I think a lot of the mistakes that teams made with Vegas the first time around, they made sure not to make with the Kraken this time, as far as, dealing assets and trying to, trade draft picks to protect guys and all kinds of stuff. So, but I think, how the Kraken, play, they seem to be more of a defensive-minded team than Vegas was in their infancy. And Vegas looked to kind of be a scoring team, whereas the Kraken looked to be more trying to keep games close and low scoring. So how well they do. And also the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks had a lot of injuries last year. Jonathan Taves missed the whole season with an injury that we didn't even know about until he publicly came out and talked about it in the offseason. What are the Blackhawks? Do the Blackhawks still have a little bit of the window cracked open from the remaining of that core, or is the window closed and they need to start looking toward a rebuild? I think that's interesting to look out west. And then there's always the Canada teams. Can somebody finally get over the hump for Canada, whether it be the Canadians or the Oilers or anybody for Canada, win something?
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going to start, actually, because I think in the Pacific Division, like the Kraken's a very exciting team. I mean, we saw how well Vegas did, and I think you hit on a key point there. They're not going to make the same mistakes they did with the Golden Knights. So you're not going to probably see that, like 51 games winning game season from the Kraken right away. And Dave Hextall is a guy that I'm very well versed with. Dave Hextall was the head coach for North Dakota when I was at school there, and he had guys like TJ Oshie and Zach Parise and guys like that had played underneath him. And he's brought in a lot of guys from that college era, like when he was coaching in college. He has a lot of those guys that are in the NHL. He brought out to the Kraken. So it is kind of a more defensive mindset. I think they are going to be a little bit tougher. You know, they're trying to make it hard to score them because they didn't necessarily get the big shooters. They didn't get, you know, the high scoring guys. So they're going to play that more rougher, kind of like Philly style when Hextall was the coach for the Flyers. You're probably going to see that same kind of mentality out in Seattle for a while. We'll see what happens. I mean, they could perform well. They're the wild card of the Pacific Division for sure. When you bring up Canada teams, though, I think Vancouver probably has the most well-rounded of all Canadian hockey teams. I mean, yes, you have the Oilers who have Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and they have the flashy pieces up front. But when you want to talk about depth through four lines, Vancouver actually looks really good. And I think that you're looking at maybe like Golden Knights on top in the Pacific, then Edmonton and Vancouver kind of battling. Seattle is kind of that, where are they going to land? What are they going to do? They could come out and surprise us all, but overall, not too much there. Couple other things, since you brought him up. Alexander Ovechkin, I do think, doesn't necessarily play at that level, but he is going for the all-time like goal-scoring record. So that is something to watch for this year. He could potentially do it if he doesn't have a down year. And then we've got a couple big trades. But go ahead.
As far as Ovechkin, I mean, he's on pace to get the Gretzky, but he can't get the Gretzky this year. He's got to maintain pace this year. I mean, realistically, you're looking for, if he's going to get to Gretzky, he's got to have a 30 to 40 year goal year this year to keep that pace. And the injury doesn't help things to start.
No. But it still gives him drive to keep going. So, like, even with the injury, you're still going to want to watch him just to see. Yeah. And two other big storylines coming out right now is Jack Eichel has been requesting a trade for some time. So are we going to see him move?
All right. Here's the thing with the Eichel situation, since you brought it up. All right. First off, as a Ranger fan, I'm so happy that they finally re-signed Zibanejad, because that takes us out of the Eichel sweepstakes, because I never wanted Jack Eichel. Here's the thing with Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel is 25, and he's a great player when healthy. He's not healthy. And more importantly, is he not healthy? He has a neck condition. The biggest issue with him in Buffalo right now is he wants what Buffalo calls an experimental surgery, where they want him to do something else. So they keep trying to cross that bridge. Buffalo in the last week has gotten more serious as far as talking to teams again, because other teams are going, well, if we trade for him, we're open to him doing this surgery. Okay, but Buffalo's got to lower the ask. Buffalo can't ask for this bounty for a guy that if you trade for him, you're trading for him for next year. You're not going to have him this year. Plus, he's got a $10 million cap hit. Okay, so Buffalo has to be realistic. Get a couple of picks, get a pick and a player. Be realistic about what you're getting for Jack Eichel, because remember, it's a disgruntled guy. It's a guy who hasn't shown he can be healthy. And again, it's a guy that can't play this year. Plus, remember, at the end of the day, if you can find somebody that's willing to take on the $10 million and you're not eating any of it, you're getting out of it. So take what you can get. Buffalo's got to come back down to earth. This is a Ben Simmons situation all over again, which we'll get to.
Oh, yes, we are definitely covering the Ben Simmons thing again tonight. The other big name that's coming out in trade talks and rumors right now is Vladimir Tarasenko. So he has apparently been displeased with the organization for quite some time too. So I'm interested kind of to see, like, these are bigger name guys that aren't really necessarily performing for this year, or like Tarasenko could be somebody you make a play for a deep playoff run this year. That's possible. But we're starting to see some of these guys come in and shake it up a little bit. I honestly would like to see Tarasenko move on. I don't really want him for Minnesota, but it would be interesting to see if he goes somewhere else, like where he would land and what he can do outside of St. Louis.
I think in the Tarasenko situation, you're going to have to look at the deadline. I think St. Louis is going to try and be St. Louis, be who they've been the past couple of years, hope that playing well and Tarasenko maybe having a good year would kind of change the fortune. But if we get close to the deadline and Tarasenko is really forcing the issue, then yeah, I could ultimately see St. Louis trying to move Tarasenko to somebody who is a big piece away down the stretch.
All right, so we've gone for about 10 minutes here on hockey. Good start for us. As we said, it's
here real quick.
It's night
Since
one. Yeah, go ahead.
Since we're going to move off of hockey, let me give the picks I have here real quickly. I'll just run through them.
Yeah, sorry, didn't know you had hockey picks. Go ahead.
Yes, just real quickly. So as far as like division winners and stuff, there's not a whole lot of value there, so we're not going to do that. I'm just going to give you a couple of yes, no to make the playoffs, and then a couple of team totals. So I didn't catch anything on the Penguins because the game started, but I would look at Penguins not to make the playoffs and the team total under if you can find good numbers there. Caps not to make the playoffs is plus 115. I would take a stab there. Canadians to make the playoffs is plus 160. I'd take a stab there. I think, the Carey Price situation, we didn't touch on that. Carey Price entered, a wellness program with the NHL. He's out for at least a month. I think that's kind of devaluing the Canadians. I think the Canadians can kind of tread water even with Price out. So at plus 160, I'm willing to take a stab on them to make the playoffs. As far as team totals, Ranger team totals 97.5. I'll look at the under, that's minus 105. Islanders under 99.5 is plus 110. I would take a look at that. I think that Metropolitan Division is just going to be teams beating up on each other. So getting high point totals is going to be difficult. Caps under 95.5 is minus 110. Blackhawks, I like rebounding. Their team totals over 91.5. That is minus 110. And the Oilers, 99.5. I'll take the under at minus 120.
Good enough. The only real prediction I have for the NHL season is that neither Pennsylvania team makes the playoffs. I think we're both in agreement that Pittsburgh's, with the injuries to Crosby and Malkin, like I don't see them performing, and the Flyers haven't been decent for a couple of years now, so I think it's safe to say they both miss.
The whole Flyer situation is dependent on Carter Hart. What Carter Hart are you getting? Are you getting the guy that 2 years ago, coming into last year, people in Philly thought he could be a possible Vezina nominee, or are you getting the guy last year who let up soft goal after soft goal? If Carter Hart suddenly turns into, the young promising goaltender that they thought they had 2 years ago, Philly could get in, but it's all dependent on what they're getting from there.
No, you're absolutely right. So they're a toss-up, but I would say if you wanted to do just kind of a different style bet, I would say neither team, just to be safe. You'd probably get a better overall odd if you say both teams, just because of Hart's situation kind of being make or break for them.
I'm sure somebody's got a prop about Pennsylvania.
Probably. Somebody will have it. All right. Now we're going to move on off of the happy subject for me, being that hockey season's back. We're going to move into a little bit of drama here. So it seems that this weekend for the NFL held quite a bit of drama for quarterbacks and coaches, and just coaches in general again this week. I mean, you have, obviously the news broke yesterday about John Gruden resigning from the Raiders, which we'll touch on in a second. Apparently Trevor Lawrence is now arguing with Urban Meyer over whether or not he's able to do a quarterback sneak, which is a pretty interesting development and something I really want to kind of dig into. And then lastly, there was a video released after the game on Sunday for the Vikings and the Lions, where it looked like Kirk Cousins wanted to get into fisticuffs with Mike Zimmer. So trouble in paradise there as well between the two of them. What's your opinion kind of overall? And then we'll get into the weeds on each one.
Well, I'll save the Gruden thing for last, because it was like Urban Meyer had a video last week and then John Gruden said, "Hold my beer." And then we find out that the John Gruden thing doesn't even come up until, we left out the fact that the football team had their complex raided by the feds. Their trainer or assistant trainer is now on leave, and in that investigation is how the Gruden emails come out, because the team was involved in this whole thing. So it's just a whole smorgasbord. So we'll dive more into the Gruden thing. The Urban Meyer thing is more where I want to go, because here's Urban coming off of last week where it looked like they were going to get a win against Cincinnati. They coughed that away. And then this week they play and it just never really got anywhere. But the situation you're talking about is they're on the goal line and it's 4th down, I think, and they hand the ball off. And, they asked Urban in the postgame, well, why did you run a QB sneak there? And he goes, oh, well, Trevor isn't comfortable with that. And that's something we've got to practice and we got to work on. And until he's comfortable with that, we're not going to run that in a critical situation, which immediately I was like, Lawrence ran all kind of QB options and stuff at Clemson. Like, how is he not comfortable running a QB sneak? So now, of course, Trevor comes to the podium and they ask Trevor, what's the deal? Urban says you're not comfortable running a QB sneak. And he's like, I'm playing comfortable. I have no idea what Urban's talking about. This is coming off of the heels of last week, this just shows the utter disconnect of this organization. Like, you can't you can talk about all the disconnects you want about coach and players and blah, 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 but you cannot have disconnect between the head coach and the quarterback on something as simple as, can we run a QB sneak? Okay, that shows wheels off the wagon.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like, we saw Trevor Lawrence, maybe not the most mobile quarterback we've seen. He's not great with his legs, but to come out and say he's not ready to run a QB sneak after playing quarterback his entire life, acting like this is something that's a completely foreign concept to him, is just kind of outrageous. And I think it speaks to more maybe Urban's mental state overall, than maybe his coaching ability. But I think he's just throwing out whatever excuse he can to try and salvage his job at this point. And if that means throwing your rookie quarterback under the bus, that's fine if that's what you have to do. But this is really, I think, just one final piece for him as a head coach in the NFL. I really don't see him making it past this year. If he makes it past the season, just pulling things like that, it's unbelievable to me.
I have always said, and we're getting really close to my prediction, in the next 1 to 3 weeks, I'm waiting for the Urban heart problem.
Yep.
It's coming. It's got to happen.
I think we put the over-under we put it at 6, I think. And
yes,
this would
week
be
six,
week 6.
Which we're kind of at this point.
Yeah.
So it's got to be coming soon, especially with these losses piling up.
So there's actually Zach posted in the chat here. This is a pretty good comment. It's pretty bad when your rookie quarterback has more credibility than your coach. Yeah, no, I mean, rookie quarterback has won a national title at least recently.
I think anybody in that Jags locker room has more credibility than Urban Meyer right now. I think all of Urban's credibility, I think I said this last week. Urban's credibility wasn't shot with the video. It was shot before that when he said to whoever in a post game, "Oh, what I wouldn't give to just scout for Alabama next week or something to that effect." When you say that, you say, A, I'm over my head, and B, you lost all credibility in that locker room because no NFL guy wants to hear that you want Alabama.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and credit to Zach as well, who actually sent me this. He sent me a TikTok. As we know, I'm that 30-year-old dude that follows TikToks. But he sent me a TikTok, and he goes, hey, this isn't even Urban Meyer's craziest situation. That 2009 Florida team is still probably the most ridiculous thing of his career. So, this is just – it's typical Urban Meyer stuff is kind of how I'm looking at it now.
If Urban Meyer – and that's the thing. I mean, if Urban Meyer can harbor a fugitive, then he should be able to handle an NFL football team.
42 players on that Florida Gators roster have been arrested. 42.
That's impressive.
It's impressive. Yeah. So, it's just one of those things where Urban Meyer is going to Urban Meyer. It doesn't matter where Urban Meyer goes. This just kind of seems to follow him everywhere. Moving off of Urban Meyer, I want to touch on the Zimmer and Cousins situation real quick. I caught a little heat from my own fandom on Sunday because right after the Lions kicked that field goal to make it 17-16, I just posted on Facebook and I was like, fire Zimmer and the entire front office. I didn't care that we still had the ability to come back and potentially win that game. I didn't care. There was
You
no
make Dan
excuse.
Campbell cry.
Good. I hope he's sad. That man can cry all day, every day. And you know what? I feel bad for him. Really, I do. Like the heartbreaking losses for the Lions 2 weeks in a row, and they're probably getting a third one playing the Bengals this week.
I just feel like Dan Campbell is going to have a hit out on whoever the field goal kicker is this week. Like between Tucker's, record kick the week before and then seeing this 30-second, and then the Vikings of all teams hitting a clutch kick. Like Dan Campbell can't take this. I mean, the man went from wanting to bite off kneecaps to crying in a post-game presser. You've killed his soul.
Well, we may have killed his soul, but we pretty much killed our own locker room at the same time. It's getting to the point now where literally there was a play call, 3rd and 16 for the Vikings on their own side of the field. And Clint Kubiak decides, you know what we're going to do? I got the most genius thing here. You ready? We're going to run a halfback screen on 3rd and 16 when we're in a 1-score game. It's the most unimaginative play calling. Like, I swear to God, they're pulling play calls straight out of Madden. Like some of the guys that I've played online. Like, I don't know where this thought process comes in. I think it's just it's a lack of preparation and a lack of education of the actual game, and it shows how behind in the times Zimmer and that entire offense is. Then you look at the guy like Cousins, who's actually ecstatic that we got a kicker to make a kick at the end of the game. And he gives Zimmer a good old pop on the chest in excitement. And Zimmer, like the crazed old man that he is, like grabs a hold of him and tries to shake him like he's going to hurt this guy who already has the mentality of, if I die, I die. And you're just going to shove him away from you. Like, that locker room's gone, man. That the team is going down. Like, the worst part is this is the last game.
For PTSD?
Well, I mean, the guy tore his retina on a 5-game win streak a couple years ago. So, like, if he's doesn't have PTSD, he's got something. Yeah, like he had eye surgery in the middle of the season because he tore his retina mid-game. So it's just one of those things, man, where like if you can't support your quarterback even in that moment, like, yeah, maybe he punched you in the chest a little hard. Maybe you're an old man and you were a little scared of it. But take the wins and beat and celebrate, because this is the last one you're probably getting for a while. I liked them against Carolina up until I started seeing this. So it's just a mess all in all.
Aaron Rodgers punches his coach every week, and I think he really means to, and that's fine. So,
Yep. Matt LaFleur is like a 30-some-year-old man, though. He's not in his 60s.
Well,
so like, he can take it. They're roughly the same age, so that's fine. That's like Justin Fields going up and punching Matt Nagy. Like, Matt Nagy will live. But
I do have a Vikings question for you, because I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Because Dalvin Cook is a Pro Bowl running back. Nobody's arguing that. The problem with Dalvin Cook is he's very rarely healthy. Like 16 games, let alone 17 games, is just not in the Dalvin Cook health parameter. Kind of like Saquon Barkley, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
So we've got Alexander Madison, who, when called upon, has been good. And even here, the dip in production between Cook and Madison, there hasn't been any. Madison has excelled when given the opportunity. So I pose the question to you, because I think any Viking fan who is realistic, which you are one, would say that the Vikings are a team that is a 500 team, okay? At their best, they're 10-7 in a 17-game season, because there are still a lot of holes on this roster. Mm-hmm. So if I've got a guy in Madison who I'm not paying much to, and I've got a guy in Cook who I'm paying a decent amount to, but also health is an issue, and I know that production-wise on the field, I'm not losing anything, why wouldn't you start to put a feeler out and see what you could get back for Dalvin Cook?
Mainly because a lot of what you see from Madison is you see these flashes because you don't have to see him for an entire season. When you get into the nitty-gritty of his production numbers, though, he's below average across the board. He's been performing well these past couple weeks because 90% of the time teams are not game planning for Madison. They're game planning for Dalvin Cook. And even though they look similar and they run in a similar way, they're not the same kind of running back. When you look at base run plays that every team has, where you should be averaging roughly about 3 yards per carry, Madison averages about 1.5 yards. So he's not really a viable starting running back. He is a great backup. I put him akin to like a Jet McKinnon, who was also a Vikings running back. Jet McKinnon was great in certain situations when you kind of built the offense around him for that or built plays around him to succeed. He does really well. But when you put him on a team and try and make him a feature back week in and week out, he crumbles. He doesn't perform, and you really see like he was really meant to be a backup or just more of a gadget style running back. I see the same thing with Madison. I really do. Dalvin Cook, even being injured, has the ability to change a game. Madison can just he's more of a game managing running back. You can do a lot with him and he can perform, but he's not that game changing running back that Dalvin Cook is. So that's why you don't shop Dalvin Cook. You look for a replacement, but you don't shop him until you have that next guy. And Madison's just not that next guy.
Okay, hold on. So based off of that conversation, we get this comment, and I'm going to tell you what this okay, that's the same combo, and I hear you because people are having this combo. I'll tell you why this combo is fucking ridiculous. The Zeke Pollard situation is akin to, now go back because you got to go back in the little Rolodex of your memory here for a second. The Giants had what they called thunder and lightning with Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. Yep. That is Zeke and Pollard. That is what they want. Pollard is the change of pace back. Okay, yes. He slipped through the cracks. He's got the speed. He can get the long runs. Zeke is the pounder. Zeke is the guy you want on the goal line. The Cowboys are well aware that Zeke is not the same guy from 3 years ago that they paid all the money to. That's going to have it. You know, he's going to get his chunk runs here and there. But Zeke is now the pounder. And you bring Pollard, right? And after he pounds on that line a little bit, then you bring Pollard in. Change of pace, speed. Pollard rips off some runs. Then you bring Zeke back in again. Thunder and lightning. That's what all NFL teams are ultimately looking for. That bruiser running back along with the change of pace running back. I think that's what the Bills ultimately thought they were getting in Singletary and Moss, and now they just don't know what they have at running back, period. So, you know, every team ultimately likes that. Very few teams have been able to pull it off. But the idea that, oh, well, let's trade Zeke because he's making all this money and Tony Pollard. Go ahead. Let Tony Pollard just run all over the place all day. That'll work out real well for you when Zeke's not there pounding the line over and over again. Okay, I get that offensive line is good, but, you know, the offensive line didn't look real good when Dak was out last year and Zeke was trying to run the football. So, you know, all the things have to go together to make it work. So let's stop with the one is better than the other thing. One makes the other.
Yep. Madison really can pick up the slack when Dalvin Cook's hurting at the end of the game. I don't know why they haven't done more of that this year. Considering Dalvin's hurt this early, you know, having ankle issues already, we should be seeing more Cook on first and second down, bring Madison in as kind of just that bruiser, even though he's not really a power back, but you can bring him in on third and short and he can make a play for you. It saves Dalvin, keeps him a little bit more fresh. It's not really taking yards away from him for you fantasy football guys either. Like, you're still going to give the ball to Dalvin in the red zone. You're still going to do that. But driving down the field, you can give it to Madison. It's fine.
You would think that because of Cook's health issues and whatnot, that you would see more of a split carry situation just to try and take some of the wear and tear off.
Mm-hmm. But you don't. And it's the inexperience of, well, Zimmer being a defensive-minded head coach, an offensive coordinator who doesn't know what he's doing, who's just running his father's playbook, who his father's playbook only worked because Peyton Manning was able to audible out of the shit. So, you know, it's not a winning combination there. They need a complete overhaul. It would be nice if they got one of these college guys potentially that's willing to come to the NFL not an Urban Meyer type, but somebody who actually wants to make changes in the way that the game of football is played, wants to come in with a new kind of play calling style and a new setups, kind of like what Sean McVay is doing in LA, Matt Rule's being relatively successful with that now in Carolina, something like that. You need somebody, or a coordinator that has the ability to be a head coach and can come in and make these changes and make these plays. That's what Minnesota needs. And they need a GM that's going to back them instead of a GM that's going to allow their head coach to draft 4 first-round cornerbacks in 5 years. That's what they need. So moving on, we're going to get off that subject. Do we want to cover Gruden now, or do we want to save that for later?
You can go to Gruden whenever you want. I got plenty on Gruden.
Okay. So just to close out the football category for us today before we get to picks and stuff. So John Gruden last night has officially resigned as the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Now, it was probably about a week ago when we first heard the rumblings of these supposed emails that were coming out about him making racist remarks and things like that. And that was all we heard. We heard that it was a racist remark about DeMaurice Smith. And honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be when I read it. I mean, you could tell the guy was trying to be funny, but it's still completely inappropriate. Not anything that should be said, especially about someone in that position. And you brought up the FBI raid. They were sent to the owner of the Washington football team. It's one of the guys that he sends these emails to. Now,
I would say not the owner, the team president. They were sent to Bruce Allen, not Dan Snyder.
Okay, sorry. They were sent to Bruce Allen, who, that guy has a certain belief structure about culture and everything within football.
That guy's no longer with the team.
Yeah, he's not with that team either. So, you have that situation starting already, and now you have him coming out. We have more emails, which they haven't fully released everything in them yet. But he's talking about how Steve Fisher needs to be reprimanded for allowing queers to play football, and how women should not be involved in any way, shape, or form. Granted, these emails are 10, 11 years old, but
we didn't even get to the best part of the emails yet.
No, I was going to let you just go off on that on your own. I was just setting you up for it.
Oh, no. You left out the biggest part of the emails. Okay? We left out the part that in the midst of him and Allen going back and forth in emails, they were also sending emails of the team cheerleaders in just bikini bottoms.
See, I didn't bring that up because I only heard that from one source.
Oh, no, that's out there.
Is that out there now? Okay.
That's verified as can be.
Okay, as long as that's verified, cool. Because I was like,
that's verified. I'm not running with that unverified. That comes from very verified sources.
Okay. Now my question with that is, when we had the release in the press announcements and everything about Dan Snyder and everything before the season started, and all the issues that were going on with the football team, how did that not get brought up? Were they saving this?
This all started because of this trainer getting raided. Okay, nobody would have known any of this if the feds weren't going through emails. The feds are the one that found this, not the NFL, not somebody working at one of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
The feds.
Yeah.
All the times that we tell the government to stay out of our sports, the government helped us out with this one. But here's the thing. While I'm not going to try and back Gruden in any of this and say Gruden needs to keep his job, that's not what I'm doing here. The NFL is being so hypocritical with the Gruden situation. It's not even funny. Okay, Gruden resigned. Okay, that's the safe face. Okay, the Raiders were like, listen, we'll let you go quietly, or we're going to kick in the moral clause because this certainly hits a moral clause, and you're out.
Yeah.
Okay. We were talking about Urban and the moral clause that way. This one clearly hits that clause. There's no gray area. This one hits it perfectly. So there's that. But this is the same NFL that has Deshaun Watson with 20 sexual assault cases looming. And their biggest thing in the news cycle is, where will Deshaun Watson end up? This is the same NFL that had Riley Cooper on a video a few years ago, use a racial term, and the team had to suspend him. The NFL didn't. This is the same NFL that had a video of Ray Rice punch a woman in an elevator, and basically the teams had to blackball him, not the NFL. Okay? The NFL blackballed Colin Kaepernick, and the only thing Colin Kaepernick did was take a knee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is the problem with the NFL. The NFL cares about their bottom line, not, things that people care about. It's not that Gruden said something offensive. It's not that Gruden, offended people. That's not what this is. The NFL doesn't care about it. I mean, here's the thing. We had the first set of emails. Okay? And then, Gruden got to coach the game. Gruden came out after the game, said, he said what everybody who's apparently racist says, that he's not a racist. I'm surprised he didn't tell us that his best friend is black. So we had that whole situation. And then we go, and I wonder if we don't get DeMaurice Smith, who, by the way, was nearly thrown out of the NFLPA. He barely survived the vote. If he doesn't go on Twitter and make the statements he made about Gruden's comments and basically saying how it shows that the NFL hasn't progressed and it's still a problem, blah, 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 blah. And then on top of that, we get the second set of emails. Is John Gruden still the coach this Sunday? Because I think he absolutely is. I think the NFL wouldn't have stepped in, and I think the Raiders wouldn't have stepped in because the Raiders showed that they weren't going to step in the first place. So it's when the media or the cloud gets too dark that all of a sudden something has to happen. Because when this was just a little thing where, these are emails from a decade ago and, we could pass it off because he wasn't employed by the NFL and blah, 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 blah. Okay, we would have swept that under the rug. That wasn't a big deal. But now there's more, and, now we're being a little vocal about it. And so now we have to do something about it. But, you have Dan Snyder, who has an abundance of things wrong, still owns the team. Robert Kraft did the same thing that Deshaun Watson is being accused of. He still owns the team. The NFL is just hypocrites. They don't stand on any morals. They don't care about anything except their bottom line. This is the same NFL, by the way, that's kicking out Gruden for making racial and homophobic sayings. But look at what the halftime show of the Super Bowl is going to be. Because of how badly edited are you going to do that?
Yeah. I'm so excited for that halftime show because I want to see how the NFL is going to react to what's going to happen. Don't get me wrong. I love every single entertainer that's going to be there this year. How they're going to make that work and be okay with that and the backlash that will eventually come out from whatever happens on that night is going to be interesting. As our comment in the chat there does say as well, McNair called his players prisoners as an owner. We could go all day about things that owners say.
I would say owners have made all kinds of racist comments. Wasn't there I forget who it was. Wasn't like a year or two ago where somebody literally called them slaves or made that term or made it very close to that term?
That might have been McNair. I think it was.
Oh, is that in that same thing?
Yeah. So and you're looking at it, you have the Kareem Hunt situation too, where he basically front kicks a woman in a hotel and it's on video, and the guy still plays for Cleveland. No one bats an eye about it.
Michael Vick.
Yeah, Michael Vick. I mean, Michael Vick went to jail and came back. Now, granted, Michael Vick's situation is a little bit different to an extent. He didn't actually have the dogs, but he knew what was going on.
Who was? Oh God, I can't remember. There was somebody that beat their kid with a tree branch.
Oh, that was Adrian Peterson. Thanks for that.
Yes.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson. Yeah, that's what we called him for years.
Yep.
Beating his kids with a switch. Yeah. And he was chastised for that. He was never the same player after that because of all.
But he was still employed.
But still employed. Greg Hardy beat up on his girlfriend badly. He got removed. The Cowboys dropped him. But now he's out there beating people in the UFC. So if you're athletic, and dare I say it, you're athletic and black, you're going to get paid to do something, and they'll throw it under the rug as long as you're making them money. It's sad.
Now, mind you, we point out all these situations. Some guys got suspended, some guys no, blah, blah, blah. But Josh Gordon going to get popped for smoking weed.
100%. Yeah, and he got a ban. He's had multiple bans for that.
It's like, leave Josh Gordon alone. Josh Gordon's a freaking churchgoer compared to these guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, it comes down to, I think, the race issue and the sexism issue are big things that the NFL is working to improve on. Gruden just happens to get called out on those two things right now. Domestic violence always seems to kind of get swept under the rug. So if you're not an owner or a high-value player or something like that, you're not really going to see much taken out. Gruden just kind of got hit, right place, right time, everything coming out. It is interesting, that like the timing on everything is interesting, specifically for DeMaurice Smith, like with the situation that he was in, and then the email comes out about Gruden insulting him. Like, you got to wonder if this is intentional in a lot of ways.
Yeah. What a few players have come out and said is the truth. Okay. Again, this happened because the feds happened to look. Okay. Yeah. If we start diving into everybody's emails, I would say it's going to be like you just cracked open a beehive. Okay. Because I guarantee you it's not just one.
Oh, no. It's every single coach out there, I bet, has something like this. Anybody that's been coaching for at least 10, 15 years in the NFL has probably got some emails that they will consider like talking shop.
Coaches, owners, players. I mean, everybody. I mean, players are using similar terms that we're chastising Gruden for in an email on the field to each other.
Mm-hmm. They're getting flags for that now, though.
Yeah, well, supposedly.
Allegedly. Yeah, allegedly.
I've seen all kinds of questionable flags lately, so.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the taunting penalties.
Do we want to point out some things here from the NFL week before we move on? Because there are some things. All right, first off, Russ is hurt.
Yep.
Aaron Donald went and broke Russ with his head.
Yep.
So it was funny too, because literally right before that, Matt Stafford has a finger injury. You're wondering about Matt Stafford. Tapes it up, comes back. Russ then hits Donald. You see that finger going east-west instead of north-south. So you don't know what's going on there, and you see him trying to grip the ball. But, and now calm down. I'm not saying that this is going to extend into this week. But Gino looked okay. Wasn't horrible. I mean, he made that game closer than it was. I mean, because if it wasn't for Gino, Rams win that thing by 25.
Yeah.
But Russ out for a while, and therefore the Seahawks season is done. No bueno there.
Yeah, it's a killer for my fantasy team. But, I mean, Geno Smith, we all know what we're getting with Geno Smith. But, hey, maybe we haven't seen him outside of the Jets, really. And we're seeing that Sam Darnold looks halfway decent.
Oh, we'll get to Sam Darnold. I'm not there yet.
I know we're not there yet, but I'm just saying, like, maybe Geno Smith can be halfway decent. You might see this as like almost a career, not resurgence, but almost like a little bit of vindication for him. If he can do halfway decent with the Seahawks and Russ's absence, like maybe, just maybe, we can say some nice things about Geno Smith again.
I was like, if the timeline for Russ is 4 to 8 weeks, if you get lucky and it's 4 weeks, all right, which that's really lucky. But if it's 4 weeks, can Geno keep them afloat?
Yeah,
that's all you're
almost like a Teddy Bridgewater in New Orleans situation with Drew Brees out. Can Geno Smith almost pull a Teddy Bridgewater, and not necessarily win 5 straight, but yeah, can he keep them afloat? Can he keep them in contention?
Okay. The Packers Bengals game. What a mess. Nobody wanted to kick. Nobody wanted to make a kick. The Bengals think they win the game before the guy ever kicks it.
Celebrating as he missed it. Yeah.
Joe Burrow's getting hurt again. You got Aaron Rodgers, of all people, telling Joe Burrow you might want to slide. I mean, that game was just everything that is wrong with the NFL in a nutshell.
Yep. Well, yes and no. I mean, this isn't the first time the Packers have had this happen with Mason Crosby either.
Well,
the
no.
last time this happened, it was with Minnesota. Daniel Carlson is a kicker for Minnesota, Mason Crosby in Green Bay. That game ended in a tie. So at least Crosby was able to redeem himself at the end and make one. But we've seen him miss 4 field goals before. I mean, and that's something that I kind of want to get to with, I had this topic that we were going to cover tonight, which was like pretenders versus contenders.
Oh,
The more and more I see the Bengals, the more and more I'm like, this is a team that's going to be dangerous, but like Burrow's still getting hurt. Burrow's getting hit way too hard still. But this team is keeping up and competitive. I mean, they're 3-2 now, but they were 3-1 going into that game.
Yeah, no, the Bengals are legit. The Bengals are where the Chargers were last year in that they're good. They need to figure out how to get over the hump and win games that they should or that are close and they probably shouldn't, but they still come out to, which we'll get to with San Diego or I should say the Chargers. They're not San Diego anymore. We'll get there in a bit. But yeah, they're on the cusp. The biggest thing for them is, like you said, Burrow has to be smarter. He can't get hurt, especially when it's his fault, not the offensive lines.
Yep.
Okay. You can't be on the outside running and run into a hit. It's similar to, and I didn't have this on my list, so I wasn't going to. I guess I was. Okay. Look at Trey Lance. Trey Lance is on the goal line. He runs an out. He's got 2 defenders waiting for him at the goal line. And instead of trying to stick the ball out or jump or something, he tucks the ball into his chest, puts his head down, and tries to run through 2 of them. And you know what it did? It just made a very loud thud. He didn't get in. They turned the ball over, and he bounced backwards. You're an NFL quarterback. It doesn't work like – this isn't South Dakota State. It doesn't work like that here. Burrow is the franchise of Cincinnati. Okay, the Bengals – everything about the Bengals in contention starts and ends with Joe Burrow. Be smart, be safe.
Yeah. The more you protect him, which is, I mean, grabbing Jamar Chase is looking like it's paying dividends now, but Penei Sewell probably still would have been a good idea for them. So,
an interesting thing, and I didn't sit here and figure it out. I kind of forgot about it, but you bringing up Jamar Chase reminded me. I'm curious, in the NFL right now, if you're looking at quarterback and wide receiver duos, with the start that Burrow and Chase are off to. Right now, we're not talking about long term. We're not talking about everything combined, but right now, I wonder where they would rank. I wonder if they're top 5. Because you've got, obviously you've got Rodgers and Adams.
Mm-hmm. Trey Lance and Debo, or Jimmy G and Debo Smith,
I would put Burrow and Chase above either of that group.
Yeah, I would too.
I can't put Brady in there because Brady spreads the ball. He doesn't have that go-to guy.
Mm-hmm.
I would really have to sit down and go through it. But I certainly think that at the moment they're at least top 5.
They definitely are top 5. I would even as much as I'm hating my own team right now, Cousins and Jefferson are one of those good tandems right now. Jefferson's still putting up numbers week in and out.
Whoever the football team quarterback is in McLaren.
Yeah. Russell Wilson and either Lockett or Metcalf, depending on the week. When.
But see, that's what makes it tough about putting Russ in there because I'm looking for a guy who's got their clear option. Like Chase is Burrow's clear option. He'll sprinkle in Boyd, but Chase is the guy. There you go. There was one I was thinking of. Murray and D-Hop.
No. You can't put Murray and D-Hop this year because D-Hop has not been D-Hop.
I would say D-Hop's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Now
Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs.
That's not a bad one. Now here, Mahomes and Hill got brought up. Is it Mahomes and Hill or Mahomes and Kelsey?
It's really Mahomes and Kelsey. It's not Hill. Because you have Hill, but you also have Hardman that can do the same thing, just a little bit.
I'm
slower.
saying that's why the Mahomes one is debatable too. I think I'm going to spend the week trying to formulate that out.
Yeah.
And we can go back to that next week. So Mac Jones come back. I mean, do we give it any credibility because it's against the Texans?
Yeah. No, you still do. Prior to last week, Mac Jones was the only rookie quarterback that had a win this year. So Mac Jones coming back, even if it is against the Texans, that's still progression for him. He's still learning, and now he kind of has that off his back. So it's him showing more progression under Belichick. So I give him credit for it. I mean, the Texans are going to be the Texans, and I mean, with Mills as their quarterback too, you don't expect much from them. But to kind of see him
look like freaking Tom Brady.
Yeah, for 1 week. They all get it. Every one of them gets it for a week. But Mac Jones is making the necessary progressions he needs to be viable for multiple seasons as a quarterback. We haven't really seen that from Fields yet. We're not seeing it from Lance. We're definitely not seeing it from Trevor Lawrence if he's not even trusted to do a QB sneak. But, I don't have an issue with it. I like that he's making these progressions. I like that he's getting this in. I like that he's been competitive in games with teams that he doesn't have any business being competitive with. It just really shows that he does have some maturity, and maybe all the heat that he took for having this, these outstanding receivers and everything in Alabama didn't necessarily mean that he wasn't still a quality quarterback.
You know what I was thinking? We'll go to the college football segment at some point. We'll always talk about, this could be a letdown spot for somebody because they came off of a big win last week and blah, blah, blah. Look at the Patriots situation this week. Jones went toe-to-toe in the rain in New England against Brady and the Bucks last week. All right.
Yep.
The Patriots defense did an outstanding job. Rain probably helped out, but I mean, they were right there till the end, a field goal goes a different way and who knows what happens. Now they come to the Texans in a game that you would expect that defense to be almost dominant against Davis Mills. And Mills looks like Tom Brady, and they've got to come back. Letdown spot for the Patriots. Maybe it happens in the NFL from time to time, too.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So, and everything's just kind of been weird with football overall this year, the way that we're seeing some of these teams perform week in and week out. And we are seeing a lot of things that are different and unprecedented situations for a lot of different teams. So, yeah, they were probably riding that high of keeping it close with the Bucks. And, I mean, that probably gives them confidence against a team like the Bills, who is their number one priority to beat this year is try and get past the Bills at any cost. However unlikely that is, that's kind of their goal. So to see them struggle and have to come back against Houston was a wake-up call, but hey, they answered that call. That's the way that I look at it. Like, yeah, you stumbled, but you fought back and you won that game. You were supposed to win this game. You didn't make it look pretty, but you won. All right, what else you got on the NFL? I know you wanted to talk Sam Darnold.
Okay, you want to go to Darnold?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to talk about pretenders and contenders?
Yeah.
Panthers, Broncos, fakes. Take them off right now. Okay.
Yep.
The Bronco defense, I thought was legit.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
What was that? Okay, I know I'm not getting anything from the offense. I'm not banking on Teddy B to give me much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Teddy B had to lead a comeback because the defense decided they weren't going to stop anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and as he's making the comeback, I'm like, you need one stop, and you got a shot, and it was just never coming. Okay, and Sam Darnold, after 2 weeks of, he got away from the Jets. Look at this, blah, 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 blah. Sam Darnold's the reason they lost that game. The Eagles didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a blocked punt and Sam Darnold turning the ball over, which is Sam Darnold's problem, which is the same problem he had with the Jets. Okay, it's like Sam Darnold went from Mr. Incredible to the guy that wanted to be Mr. Incredible again. Okay, I'm not buying the Panthers. Okay, that defense would have to be the Ravens defense with Trent Dilfer for the Panthers to be legit. Not happening. Yeah. So they're done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on the flip side, the two best teams in the AFC at this moment are the Bills, clearly number one. Okay, they stamped that with what they did to Mahomes and the Chiefs. Okay, and you want to argue with me now at who's number two?
No, I'm not going to argue with you at who's number two. I was actually going to give you credit.
Because here's the thing. And this is what I was getting to when I was talking about the Bengals. This game this week, okay, and if you want to knock the Charger defense, and it was a surprise, the Chargers do have a top 5 passing defense, let Baker and the Browns go up and down the field, okay? But you look at the last few seasons for the Chargers, that's a game the Chargers would find a way to lose. No matter what would happen, whether they were winning or they do not win that game. And Justin Herbert said, don't worry, boys. Put them on the shoulders, and they win the football game. Okay? And the Chiefs are exactly where I thought they would be through 5 at 2-3. I said they'd either be 2-3 or 3-2 when we talked about it before the season. The first 5 games was a minefield, and that's exactly how I thought it would go. Now it starts to ease up, and I think you'll see the Chiefs start to look a little more like the Chiefs. But Herbert and the Chargers have done exactly what they needed to do at the beginning to build up that cushion, okay? And you look at the Broncos, who look like they were for real. We know they're not. The Raiders, you can throw out the window now. And I want to get to another situation with the Raiders here in a minute that I want to talk about. But, okay? Herbert is solidifying himself. As of right now, the MVP conversation goes like this. There's 3 names. It's Allen, it's Kyler, and it's Herbert. Yep. That's it. That's the conversation. And as the season keeps going on and on and on, it'll develop a little more. Here's the thing I question about people who are on the Josh Allen MVP train. Okay? You remember, the knock always on Brady, and I know Brady won MVPs, but whenever we were trying to dissect about somebody else to win the MVP, was the division. Okay? How good is the division that Josh Allen is playing in? Who is legit in that division? The Patriots, maybe. The Dolphins aren't.
Dolphins are solid, though. They're a more solid team than they have been in the past couple of years.
They're not legit.
They're not legit, but they're better than they were in the Brady years.
Oh, that's fine, but they're still not legit. I mean, let me put it this way. After the Bills, do you have a 500? Do you have a 9-8 team in that division?
Potentially.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's a strong maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So that could hurt Allen's MVP case.
Could.
But the Chargers are what I said they would be. Now, on the other hand, really quickly, like I said, if you want some Chief buyback, all right, at right now for the division, the Chargers are plus 125, Chiefs are plus 150. If you think the Chargers might stumble a little bit and the Chiefs can re-green Brown plus 150, I'm not sure I would advise that. But let me see what their number is. I had it and I lost it. I need to find them to make the playoffs. It's minus 350 right now for them to make the playoffs. It's still a lot of juice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but considering where you were before the year, if you got it, now might be the time to lay it because it's only going to go up from here. That's the lowest you're going to get. So, sure. But Chargers are what I said they would be.
They are who you thought they were.
They are who we thought they were. You want to crown them? Crown them.
Yep.
All right. So
I ain't crowning them, but they look good.
Raiders, real quickly. I do it. Despite the Gruden mess. Okay, the loss of the Bears. Like, I don't know if it was because of the Gruden mess or or what, but like they couldn't move on the Bears. Like Derek Carr looked horrible. All right, and not only did Derek Carr look horrible, but right before that, there was a report that broke out that Derek Carr was not going to talk in season about a contract extension. And here's the thing, okay? And this is something that could blow up in Derek Carr's face, especially with Gruden not there now. Because Derek Carr, there were a lot of questions about, was Derek Carr the long-term answer there before Gruden got there? And now Gruden gone, you don't know how Derek Carr is going to look the rest of the season. Derek Carr doesn't want to negotiate in season because Derek Carr wants to give them financial flexibility to try and get Devontae Adams there. Yep. Okay? That has been the thing when they didn't think Rodgers was coming back. And remember, Devontae had that 3-week thing where he talked about not wanting to be there either until Rodgers suddenly showed back up and then he was fine. Okay? When Rodgers leaves, Devontae is going to leave. Yep. Derek Carr and Devontae were college teammates. They've talked about it on Twitter, how they'd love to reunite, blah, 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 blah. And Carr wants to lead that. Like I think Carr would be willing to take less money to allow the Raiders to try and accommodate Devontae coming there. But if Carr plays like crap, you have to wonder how committed are the Raiders to Carr, and also how appealing do the Raiders look to Devontae Adams at this point?
Well, no, I mean, in that regard, you just have to look at, I mean, where does Aaron Rodgers want to go play? If Devontae says, let's go to Vegas.
Well, that was something that got brought up too in a conversation I was having was what if the Raiders say, well, you know what, we'll just move off Carr and we'll bring Rodgers and Devontae here.
Yeah. Just drop that hammer. Put Devontae on there with Ruggs, with Renfro, who's the most solid pass catcher, they have, and bring in Aaron Rodgers into that situation with Josh Jacobs, who's still a viable running back, so he wouldn't be missing Aaron Jones that much either. That's not a bad situation for him. It's really not.
The one knock on Rodgers to the Raiders, and I think when Rodgers goes and picks his team next year, he's gonna be looking a lot like Brady did. He's gonna look at offensive lines. He wants to be protected because he's not really protected in Green Bay right now. He gets chased a lot. He's got to run, blah blah blah, and he gets sacked. Raiders' offensive line isn't real good.
It's true.
So he might have the conversation, I'm not saying he wouldn't be willing to have it, but he's like, you need to do something to that offensive line. Remember, the Bucs got Brady and then drafted an offensive lineman to protect his blind side. That was the first thing they did. Okay, he might go to the Raiders and be like, you're going to have to do, if I'm coming here, you better do something to protect me.
Well, you got to look at who's going to be the coach there too.
Well, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah. I mean, he's not going to go anywhere where he's not going to like the play calling, where he's not going to get a say. We know that Davis is going to, if Aaron says I'm coming.
Davis goes to him and goes, you can pick the coach.
Yeah. Tell me who you want. I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like that's what he'll do.
It's certainly not going to be whoever this guy is now, Mark, whatever the hell his name is, the assistant head coach that got bought. He's just laying there for now. He's not going to be the guy.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry too much there. Derek Carr to Pitt in the chat. Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad place. I could see that working out. Derek Carr, I mean, definitely beats Big Ben at this point. And you don't have Duck Hodges there.
Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, Dwayne Haskins. Mason Rudolph, I think, is still there too.
Isn't he still concussed from Myles Garrett?
Myles Garrett. Yeah, probably. Any other topics you want to touch on football before we move on here?
Two more real quick. Number one, I can't go through this without talking about my Giants.
Saquon.
It's a whole thing. Okay, Saquon gets stepped on, and now he's got an ankle sprain. The thing blew up in 5 seconds, so now here's Saquon out again. All right, Galladay pulls a hamstring. He can't play the second half. Daniel Jones couldn't walk back to the huddle. He was out. So, I mean, you've got a situation. And somehow Kadarius Toney, who showed up, he looked like a real receiver. I was stunned.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I'm the guy that's been hammering Kadarius Toney, and all of a sudden this guy's been a baller for 2 weeks. But then he goes, takes everything positive he does, and does again. Why do NFL players have the idea of the guy's wearing a helmet? I'm gonna punch him. He's got a helmet on. Somehow he's not suspended for this. I'm stunned. But
I mean, everybody wants to be a Cortland Finnegan, Andre Johnson. Everybody. That's why they do it.
So here's what potentially you're looking at with the Giants next week. Mike Glennon as your quarterback. Devontae Booker as your running back. Kadarius Toney is literally your only wide receiver because you have no Kenny Galladay, probably no Shepard, and no Slayton.
Yeah, no Darius. Yeah.
So, it's Aaron Ingram and Kyle Rudolph. And, oh, by the way, they're playing the Rams.
Yeah, good luck.
So, wonderful. The only other by the way, had they been healthy, they were hanging in there with the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
That game was close through the half.
Yeah. Glennon actually looked like a quarterback for once, which was impressive.
No, forget Glennon. Glennon was nothing. Okay, that went. But the defense was causing problems. They were getting back to turn the ball over. Jones was still moving them down the field on that Cowboys. Okay, that was a 7-point game at half, and that was only because Jones basically got knocked into Dream Street before the half ended. So, again, it's another Giants season down the drain. I don't even know if my quarterback's going to play this week. That's wonderful. The other thing, last thing I want to talk on, then we can finally get out of here. I know they're undefeated. I know there's people in this chat that want to talk about them being legit. How am I supposed to take the Cardinals legit after that? They couldn't put up any points against that. If Trey Lance is competent, the Niners win that game.
This is just more of what we've been seeing from Arizona, though. Kind of that hot, cold. We're not – it's really hard to just get a read on this team. I don't know if they're just struggling. Like, if it's a Kyle Kingsbury thing where, like, he's just getting this ridiculous play call ideas.
Well, I know Kyle Kingsbury is the reason why anytime they play somebody legit, I don't like them.
It's true. I mean, they burned us week 1 on that super long parlay. So, like, it's tough, but I just here Kyler Murray's playing out of his mind. Like, this is the best Kyler Murray we've seen so far. He's like the second best quarterback, I think, fantasy football wise. But you look at his ability to kind of almost pull a Brady, but just divvy that ball up and spread the ball around. Rondale Moore will have a big game. D-Hop has been almost non-existent, but we're still seeing him get points. But you're seeing Kyler still throwing 300-400 yards in multiple weeks. He's using his legs, but he doesn't have to use his legs as much anymore. He's really coming into his own and seeing the field. So, I mean, we're getting good there, and I think we're getting to the point where, like, Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt are in their – like, this, it's never going to get better for them than what it is right now. And once it falls off,
J.J. Watt was never so happy to see Trey Lance as quarterback. That is the most I've seen J.J. Watt perform in a game in probably 5 years.
Yep.
By the way, for once, this guy actually had something intelligent to say.
I agree with this. Yep. That's actually true. And we talked about that, I think, a week or two ago.
Yeah, this is 100%. Pittsburgh at whatever they were, 10-0, 11-0 last year. Nobody expected that, and they fell off the cliff and went out of the playoffs quickly. The Cardinals are not 5-0. They're not the best team in the West. They're not even close to being the best team in the NFC. Okay, Kingsbury or Kyler will at some point mess that up.
Yeah.
It is.
I honestly see them losing to the Rams the next time they play. I see them losing to San Francisco if they play that way again. Seattle, as long as
I got to see how competent Trey Lance is by then.
By then, yes. Or maybe Jimmy G's back and they move back to Jimmy G. Who we don't know. Seattle depends on the Russ situation. If Russ comes back in that time frame, then okay, like maybe they lose to Seattle. But I do think you're right. We had mentioned it before. Arizona's going to be that Pittsburgh team from last year. They're going to just go off for a long time and then they're going to crash and burn. Most likely going to lose to a team in their own division in the first round of the playoffs. Most likely it'll probably be the Rams. But I'm going to keep watching them and I'm going to keep enjoying watching them play until they do start that crash. And as soon as that comes, it's going to be real sad for some of our friends, but real nice to watch.
I would sell all my shares of Cardinals if I had any right now.
Yeah. Well, any preseason bets or any bets that you thought were looking real good these first couple weeks, just get ready to be let down because I don't think this is going to carry over. There's people out there saying Arizona is going to make the Super Bowl. I don't see it. Not a chance at this point.
I got a wonderful comparison for that coming up.
All right. Well, I know you had that your last one. Are we good?
Yeah.
We moving on? Cool.
Yeah, we're good.
Let's talk baseball because we got a couple games that just ended. Looks like the Braves won their matchup. The Astros won their matchup against the White Sox, and Red Sox have eliminated Tampa Bay at this point. We're just kind of waiting to see how the rest of the San Francisco-LA series shakes out. So what are your thoughts so far after we talked about everything last week? How you feel moving forward? Have you changed your opinion anywhere?
Well, give me a series, and I'll dive into that series. I got notes for every series here.
Okay.
So
I want to start with the one that I've been most heavily invested in, and not even because of the game, but because of the drama outside the game. Let's start with the Astros and the White Sox.
Okay. All right. So I said yesterday, the game that they played today, Game 4, was supposed to be yesterday. The original pitching matchup was supposed to be Carlos Rondon, who pitched today, against Jose Urquidy. Mm-hmm. Game got rained out. Immediately after the game got rained out, La Russa said, we're going to stick with Rondon as our starting pitcher in Game 4. They could have went back to Lance Lynn, who pitched Game 1. Didn't pitch very well, but they could have switched. Yeah. The Astros immediately said, we're going to Lance McCullers, who pitched Game 1 and was dominant in Game 1. As soon as that happened, I said, any chance of the White Sox coming back in the series, now done. Now done. Okay, because the way to beat the White Sox, who, much like the Cardinals and everybody saying, oh, the Cardinals are going to the Super Bowl. Everybody said the White Sox were going to the World Series. How'd that work out? Okay. Yeah. While the White Sox are top 5 in hitting fastballs and hitting changeups, they are in the bottom 5 of hitting breaking balls. And what did Lance McCullers do? All he did was throw breaking balls. Look at Game 1. That's all he did, and they couldn't touch him. Okay? McCullers, all right, Zach, if you're paying attention, all right, this is where I need you to take a deep breath. McCullers, if you noticed, got pulled very early today. He pitched like 4 innings. All right, and I was a little surprised. He had given up a run, but he was fine. No big deal. Dusty in the postgame said Lance got pulled because he felt something in his forearm. That's a big blow if he's down in any way, okay, because he is the guy in that rotation, okay? They don't have a Verlander. They don't have a Greinke. I mean, they have Greinke, but he's not that Greinke. I mean, he's coming out of the bullpen now, and he's not doing that very well. So forearm tightness, whenever you hear that, all right, McCullers already had Tommy John, so you're hoping it's not a repeat situation, but that's not good for the short term. Not good for the short term at all. But the Astros were dominant in this series. I mean, the only game that the White Sox won, the Astros were still up 5-1 and they came back. They were in a similar situation today where Astros got up, they got up. The Sox actually had an early lead. Astros suddenly take the lead. And then the Astros have a big inning. And it was almost like the White Sox, as soon as they didn't have a quick response, they threw in the towel. It was like as soon as they didn't cut in that lead quickly, like they did in Game 3, which was just a crazy game where everybody was kind of scoring all over the place, they just kind of threw it away. And then, we didn't get anything. Tim Anderson's claimed that he's the best shortstop in baseball. Certainly didn't look that way. But what I've been saying about the Sox, the offense actually did a slightly better than I thought they would. They still didn't put up a ton of runs outside of Game 3, but they were a little better than I thought. I told you this youth, with very little experience doesn't play out well. But ultimately, it was the pitching. I didn't like the pitching. Lynn didn't pitch well. Kopech in relief didn't pitch. I mean, they had nothing as far as the pitching was concerned. So that's that. But the two biggest things which you were alluding to, the White Sox obviously win Game 3. Ryan Tepera came over in a trade from the Cubs. He goes out and makes the remark of, well, I think you saw the difference in swings that the Astros had at home compared to this game. All right, obviously alluding to the scandal from before. Rondon, interesting enough, I think before Game 2 had said, all I know is when they come to Chicago, it'll be a lot harder place to play. You people need to let it go. Like I had this conversation with you before the playoffs started. All these teams have all these things to say. They didn't do anything about it. Why don't you win? Because you couldn't. They had no problem putting up runs today. They had no problems putting up runs in Game 3. So obviously it wasn't anything in Houston. So that's that. And then I got Tony La Russa again today. This drunken whatever. Abreu gets hit up and in on a 3-2 pitch. And La Russa comes out going nuts. And then in the postgame today, he says if they say it wasn't intentional, then they have, obviously they're not going to tell the truth. Who the hell's hitting him on a 3-2 count when you have a huge lead? What the? Go get another DWI. Stop. I've seen this all year with Abreu getting hit up and in by guys and La Russa coming out like some belligerent drunk asking for the pitcher to be tossed. They're not doing it on purpose, okay? The White Sox should have hit the Astros up and in. It might have helped.
Yeah, it might have. Big thing that I noticed just from a culture standpoint with the White Sox. Did you hear about this whole White Sox and John Cusack thing? Have you heard anything about this? Because this is amazing to me.
No, I didn't hear anything. I can
Okay,
only imagine how good this is.
so it made national news, and it's just the stupidest thing in the world. So, that, for those of you, there's a couple of people I know in the chat, and myself included, we follow Barstool Sports. There's a guy in Barstool Sports from Chicago called White Sox Dave. White Sox Dave has put together a banned list of people that are not allowed or not welcome at Chicago White Sox games. Barack Obama, for instance, he he has John Cusack on the list. John Cusack being a Chicago native, but John Cusack was celebrating the Chicago Cubs World Series win a couple years ago in full Cubs gear, all this stuff. He just so happens to be at Game 3, sitting behind home plate, as celebrities do, in full White Sox gear, just out there supporting the White Sox now. And this guy comes up to Cusack, finds him outside, and says, "You're not allowed to be a White Sox fan."
You know what? I did see this. I just didn't look into the details of what had happened. I did see this.
So Cusack apparently has been accused of this before by other White Sox fans, and he came out making all these points about being from the city and just supporting the city in general and stuff like that. This is all happening right after supposedly the White Sox are going to start their comeback now. This is when all this is happening, and the only thing that they want to talk about on the news and they want to talk about in Chicago is whether or not John Cusack's allowed to like the White Sox. And who did they turn to answer this age-old question when they have the biggest game of the year coming up? They turn to Ozzie Guillen and ask for him to make the judgment call. And Ozzie Guillen comes out with his flair and with his fire and is just like, of course he's not allowed to be a White Sox fan. You got to pick one. You can't do both. So to finish my point real quick, it's reasons like that why we knew they weren't going to win tonight. You had already stopped caring. You knew the comeback wasn't coming. And you're just trying to come up with excuses and shift the narrative as early as you can to just soften the heartbreak that you know is coming.
This is akin to what I've said about LeBron. LeBron, remember when the Indians went to the World Series against the Cubs a few years ago? LeBron acted like he was all into it. But every time I see LeBron, he's got a Yankee hat on.
Every time. Never
fails. Don't give me that. We'll dive into the Red Sox Rays series here in a second. But since we're talking about the Astros, I just want to – they've put out the series price already for that series. The Astros are minus 150. Red Sox are plus 130. Red Sox are also a dog against the Rays. Thankfully, I was on the Red Sox, cashed that price. If McCullers is out, I would take a stab at the plus 130.
I would as well. Absolutely.
Because for all the knocks that you can give, the Astros probably have the better lineup up and down. I'm not going to argue that. But all of a sudden, I think you get a better sale in round 2. You still have Evaldi. Eduardo Rodriguez looked pretty good in the last game. If I'm going to put that now against Framber Valdez and Jose Urquidy, and plus ain't the worst thing here on the Sox. I took the plus against the Rays, and I'm going to tell you why when we get into that series. I need to find out more about McCullers, but no McCullers, and I'm on the Sox.
Yeah, so now bringing up the Red Sox, we talked about it a little bit when we were coming into the series with the Rays. We said that they kind of needed to come out early and put the pressure on the Rays, and we knew that the Rays could be, they could really go either way with it. So I don't think either one of us was really surprised at how the series shook out. But you're saying that even with the way that they played that series, if McCullers is hurt, that's really your only way of thinking that they have a shot against the Astros.
Kike Hernandez was a real reason why they won that Rays series. I mean, he had that big series with the Dodgers too when they won the World Series. I mean, he was literally the guy for the Red Sox in this series. I mean, Chris Sale pitched horribly. Evaldi didn't give them a great. I mean, their pitching it really didn't do as good as it should have. It was really the offense that was a big reason why they beat the Rays. Also, okay, whenever you have a Kevin Cash managed team, Kevin Cash will find ways to help. Okay, must of a lot like he did in yesterday's game. Colin McHugh was the starter for the Rays. Now, we already know this is going to be a bullpen game. Both teams, in the extra innings in Game 3 ran through their bullpens. The Rays are a lot more suited for that. All right, but the Red Sox were able to come back with Eduardo Rodriguez for Game 4. Rays have Colin McHugh. And McHugh's not a guy who can go very deep. But regardless, McHugh, through the first 2 innings, is only allowed a hit. He's thrown like 18 pitches, nothing real taxing. Okay, and I know it's a guy that you don't want to go overly deep, but considering how the first 2 innings go, I would go on like a touch and feel basis. Like, let him go. If he starts to go into trouble, I've always got somebody ready. And he yanked him. He yanked him immediately, right? They end up going to, I don't remember who they went to, and then all of a sudden the wheels started coming off immediately after that. Like, it wasn't the same thing as the Blake Snell situation. We had somebody who pulled a Blake Snell situation, which we'll get to. It wasn't to that extent, but it was just another situation of Kevin Cash going by the Rays book instead of going by what his eyes and what his gut tells him on the field. And that's why the Rays never win anything. If you take last season's World Series run out, which was the short season and the weird postseason and all that, when you look at full 162 type seasons, okay, in the Kevin Cash era, I'm not talking about, going back 15 years, when they played the Phillies in the World Series, but in this kind of Rays era, the Rays every year either losing the wild card game or losing the division series. They don't get to the ALCS. This is an every year situation. And this is because, one, Kevin Cash goes by the book. He never pays attention to what's actually happening on the field. And two, because of the way the Rays play the regular season, right, that bullpen doesn't pitch the same way because they've been used so much by the time they get to October. So it doesn't have the same effect. Losing Tyler Glass now was obviously a big blow to the Rays. Obviously, what they saw from, Arozarena, again, had a good series coming off of the postseason last year. Wander Franco continues to look like the next big thing. So they have positives, but they need to figure out, all we hear about is Rays pitching. Okay? The reason why I hopped on the Red Sox series price was, look at what the Rays pitching was. They pitched Shane McClanahan in Game 1, a rookie who had a career innings was just under 150. And in Game 2 was Shane Bass, who has pitched 13 more career innings in Major League Baseball more than us. That was their Game 1 and 2 starters. Okay, now McClanahan was really good in Game 2. Oh, that reminds me. That's who we went to. Cash pulls McHugh and goes to McClanahan. It's Game 1 starter in relief in Game 4. And then they immediately got to McClanahan. So I don't know what the plan was. Had they gotten through and gone to Game 5? I mean, was he going to go to Baz, who didn't pitch good in Game 2? The whole thing didn't make any sense to me. But that was the reason I didn't like the Rays in this series. Again, it's a youth, and I bank on experience when it comes to the playoffs. That's why I like the Astros. Although, again, this McCullers thing is a big blow because pitching hurts. And I expect the Red Sox to get better pitching come the second round than they did in the first. But, yeah, Kevin Cash's inability to manage will continue to hinder the Rays as they continue to tinker with their pitching philosophy, which I think is a hindrance in October.
All right, so we're going to move on because that was a pretty easy one. You pretty much hit the nail on the head when it came to that series, so good on you. Let's talk about the Braves and the Brewers. So Braves did win tonight. I think that was just about 20 minutes ago that game finished. So how are you feeling with that series? Have you seen anything that you didn't expect there? It looks like Milwaukee's pitching really hasn't performed the way that they did in the regular season, which isn't really a shock.
No, that series, the biggest thing that I saw, and I'll give a credit to the Braves in that, it's similar to what the Dodgers are doing. Dodgers go to Bueller on 3 days rest tonight to try and go to a Game 5. The Braves pivoted and went to Morton on short rest today to try and close out the series to avoid a Game 5. And the minute they went to Morton, they had an extreme pitching advantage against Eric Lauer. Obviously, with the way that game unfolded, the pitching matchup didn't really turn out because once the bullpens came in, that game kind of exploded. It was the only game in this series, by the way, that went over. And that's really what I want to talk about is that, remember, this Brave team last year, if you remember, the wild card was it was a 3-game series last year. It wasn't a one-game play.
Yep.
Game 1 against the Cincinnati Reds, they needed 13 innings to score a run. They won that game 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then they won Game 2. And then remember, they got to the NLCS because in the division series, they got to play the Marlins, who had gotten in last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So the Braves NLCS run last year was kind of a bit of circumstance. Right now, obviously, they get to the NLCS this year. Again, I think a bit of circumstance because they got the Brewers, who I said I wouldn't like the Braves in any other series unless it was the Brewers. And this was why. Because I knew both teams are offensively challenged. I played the under in every game in this series, hit 3 out of 4. Obviously, today was the only one didn't hit. And that's what's going to come back to hurt the Braves, I think, in the NLCS, is no matter if it's the Dodgers or the Giants, you're going to have to score some runs. You're going to have to be able to put a little bit together. And, you want to the Brewers rotation is obviously good. I mean, you got good starts from Birds, you got good start from Woodruff. What do you think you're getting with these teams? Okay, we saw what Logan Webb did in Game 1. We saw what Alex Wood did last night. All right, the Dodgers have Buehler going tonight. He wasn't good, but he wasn't horrible, but he wasn't great in Game 1. We saw what Scherzer did last night, which I'm going to get to in a moment. So it's not going to get any easier for the Braves to start putting up runs. The offense will have to do something, and that's the whole reason why I don't like them to get to the World Series, because I don't have faith in that offense. Okay, and that was with Acuna or without Acuna, because remember, they had Acuna last year and they couldn't put up runs. This offense has a problem with scoring in October, which is why I don't have any faith. The biggest thing in that Braves series, which was yesterday in Game 3, it is a scoreless game in the 5th inning. Peralta's pitching a gem. He's at like 57 pitches. And the Brewers have a couple of guys on. I think it was 2nd and 3rd and 1 out, and Peralta's due at the plate. Now, you could do a lot of things here. You could try a suicide squeeze. You could just try and let Peralta put the ball in play and maybe get the run in, whatever. Craig Counsell pulls Peralta to bring in Dan Vogelbach, who proceeds to hit a one-hop to third base. The Urias breaks on contact, gets thrown out, the inning's over, and now all of a sudden you got to go to the bullpen. What the hell are you doing? Again, let the guy pitch. Both teams are starved for runs. I get that you desperately want to score a run, but let the pitcher out there who's shutting them down keep going. You're going to go in your bullpen, and now all of a sudden it helps them. No, it was horrible. The Braves are probably over there going, thank you, especially after they got out of the inning. All right, and that was after the Braves had been an idiot and cost themselves a run earlier in the game when Duvall tries to tag up from first on a fly ball to left field with Riley on third. He tags up, ends up getting thrown out at second before Riley scores, cost them a run. So, the Brewers already had new life and then gave the life right back to the Braves. Craig Counsell pulled a Kevin Cash. What he did with Willie Peralta yesterday was as bad as Kevin Cash pulling Blake Snell in the World Series last year. Kevin Cash pulling Blake Snell cost the Rays a World Series last year. Craig Counsell pulling Willie Peralta yesterday cost the Brewers any chance at winning this series.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing kind of that trend lately. So it's you would think they would see it by now. I kind of expected the Rays to, going back to the Rays, I expected them to kind of make better decisions based on how they acted last year. And I think Milwaukee just fell right into that this year, making the same kind of mistakes. So it is what it is with those series here. Going to the final series that we have going right now, the Giants and the Dodgers are currently playing. Dodgers are up 1-0. It is going into the bottom of the second, so it's still early. Giants are up 2-1 in this series here. not necessarily unexpected considering the way that these two teams have played. But what do you see what are you looking for tonight, and what are you looking for at a potential game 5?
Our buddy Carl is in Vegas, and he called me before we did the pod, and he was asking for advice of what should I do with this Dodger game. And I said, if you look at the trend, all these games have gone under. But I can't advise you to take the under in this game. Why? Because they're bringing Walker Buehler back on 3 days rest, something he's never done before. So I have no idea what you're getting out of Walker Buehler. And that shows the level of, angst that the Dodgers have at this series. I think they really thought they were going to win yesterday, which I'm going to touch on momentarily. But they know they need a win tonight, which is why they're going to Buehler. They've got the early 1-0 lead. Desclafani this season has pitched something like 32 innings against the Dodgers and is average giving up a run per inning. I know Walker's got a pretty decent pitch count here through 2 innings. The Dodgers do have the early run, which I think kind of gives them a little bit of sigh of relief because they've had problems scoring runs in this series. Like I mentioned before, Logan Webb pitched a gem in game 1. Alex Wood in the bullpen ended up outpitching Max Scherzer last night. But assuming the Dodgers get through tonight, then you've got I would assume Urias tomorrow against Webb. And if you're the Dodgers, that's ultimately what you want. You want to have one of the big 3, so you'll have Urias on the mound. Buehler won't be available. I would assume you would probably have Scherzer for an inning or 2 if need be. It'll be an all hands on deck kind of thing. Everybody can talk about Kenley Jansen, but Jansen has been fine. The bullpen hasn't been horrible. Both bullpens have been really good, which is why the series has been all low scoring. But I like the Dodgers to win tonight. That was part of what I gave our guy Carl out in Vegas. I do like the Dodgers to win tonight. Obviously, they have the early lead. And I ultimately would probably lean the Dodgers to win if we go to game 5, although, game 5, anything can happen, and considering how Webb pitched in game 1, certainly the Giants are very viable. Although, actually, no, I gave Carl Giants plus 1.5. I said I'd like the Dodgers to win, but I don't think the Giants get blown out. I mean, Giants could win this game, so I like the plus 1.5. That's what I gave Carl. But anyway, besides that, here's the thing that I wanted to bring up. Scherzer yesterday pitches 7 innings, 10 Ks, gives up a run, whatever. You realize that's Max Scherzer. So we talk about how the Dodgers scored no runs for him, tough break for Max Scherzer. If that's Clayton Kershaw last night, we're on this pod today, and I'm hearing about how Clayton Kershaw can't pitch in October. Because Clayton Kershaw has had several of those types of starts in October. Okay, and I know every time we talk about Clayton Kershaw, I bring this up because that's the one that's always seared in my brain, but I'm going to bring it up again. 2015 NLDS Mets Game 1 against Jacob deGrom. Kershaw is pitching a gem and gets pulled. Thankfully, it made sense at no point in that. It was like a Kevin Cash thing years before Kevin Cash gets pulled. Mets end up winning Game 1 and end up going on to win the series. But the narrative was Clayton Kershaw can't pitch in October. And it had nothing to do with Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah.
Okay. That Max Scherzer start last night was akin to several starts that Clayton Kershaw has had in October. I know that Kershaw has had his bad starts. I'm not saying he hasn't. But the narrative that Clayton Kershaw can't pitch in October is so overblown, it's nauseating.
Yeah, it is. But again, it's going to be there until he proves us wrong. So
he's proven it's wrong.
To those of us that watch it, yes. To the everyday person, no.
Well, the everyday person's just not going to – I mean, unless he goes through a postseason where he has 6 starts and has a 1 ERA, the everyday person just will never get off of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it takes for them, though. I mean, those that know. But the media is not one of the ones that know. So it's going to take that.
It's like the everyday person who 2 years ago wanted to argue who was the better pitcher in New York, Jacob deGrom or Garrett Cole. How did that work out?
One of them made the playoffs.
One of them couldn't pitch. I was like, ask anybody in New York if you have a one game play in, would you rather have Garrett Cole or Jacob deGrom on the mound?
I'd take DeGrom, 100%.
Who in their right mind is going to say Garrett Cole?
I mean, if DeGrom's hurt, I'm going to say Garrett Cole.
Garrett Cole had a hamstring. I'm sure that's every Yankee excuse right now. Oh, what about Garrett Cole's hamstring?
Yeah, it's not the fact that they paid like $290-some million over every other team just to secure the players that they got and still lost. $385. Ridiculous amount. All right. Anything else for baseball?
No, I'll save the rest for when we get to the rant.
Okay. I'm not going to delay the inevitable anymore, and I'm just going to get to it. My biggest pain point of the week. Biggest upset of the weekend in college football. Texas A&M gets a last-second field goal. Amazing how my life works, where field goals are just the bane of every sports moment in my life, regardless of which team it is. But Texas A&M wins on a last-second field goal against Alabama, shocks the world apparently, and walks it off at home to the biggest victory of their roller coaster of a season. Nick Saban loses. Well, the media loses pretty much every talking point it's had consistently for Alabama for the last decade, at least. The 100 straight victories against unranked opponents, gone. A former Saban, coordinator has finally beaten Nick Saban. No more talks about them having an easy lane to the playoff. All of these narratives that they've talked about for weeks are gone. Now, I'm not going to downplay it as our Texas A&M fan is in here. I'm giving full credit to A&M.
He wants you to go Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I'm not going to cry, first of all, because men that take out kneecaps don't cry. Okay, so going back to the NFL. You want to talk about pretenders? Dan Campbell's a pretender for crying. Here's what I'll say about that A&M game. A&M did exactly what I think Georgia would have done and probably still might do if Alabama by some miracle makes the SEC championship game. They could make that pretty easy considering how the SEC West has been this year. Jimbo Fisher attacked them on defense exactly how he needed to attack them. Alabama's had issues on the offensive and defensive line all year. They haven't looked the same. Bryce Young is a rookie quarterback, a freshman quarterback. I won't say rookie. He's a freshman quarterback in the league who's not used to that pressure. We saw him have trouble against Florida when Florida started pushing pressure on him. What Jimbo Fisher did is he gave different kind of looks. He blitzed differently. He threw different things at Bryce that he wasn't used to. He wasn't really prepared for, and you watched him struggle. I mean, Mechie didn't have a great game. He was dropping some easy passes, but Bryce Young also wasn't as accurate as he's been previously. The Alabama defense was basically just letting A&M walk through them the entire game, and special teams as well. Special teams could run it up and down the field on them all day on returns. So you really saw how they've talked about this before, and I really do like this analogy. It's like you're the mouse in a cheese factory, and you're about to take a bite of some poison cheese. Like, you've been living it up, thinking that you are just everything that you were last year. You're going to keep that train rolling. You're going to keep everything on the tracks, and you have no idea that you're about to eat a piece of poison cheese and you're going to roll over and die. And that's exactly what happened. They came back in that second half. They made it competitive. Saban really got after him, changed his play calling, but the defense still didn't show up. That's not the make of a playoff team in my eyes. I've said for weeks that I wasn't sold on them. They looked good because no one else looked good. But even the mighty Alabama has fallen this crazy year. Now, having said that, I'm going to pose this question to you, and you can say whatever you want about Alabama. I can take it. No tears from me. But now that Alabama's been knocked off, the top 25 overall, and I know this is something that you want to talk about, the AP poll came out, and it is a mess. This thing is crazy right now. So I just want to get your overall take on that, and then feel free to say whatever you want about my team or downplay A&M. I'm fine with either one. So what are your thoughts on college football this week?
All right, I'll get to the top 25 in a moment. Let's just get through the Bama thing first, and I'm not gonna hammer it because I was on, I give out Bama first half every week. I mean, that's that of all those things that you ran through that A&M knocked off, the assistant coach and the unranked and all that. The first half trend ended finally too, and the biggest thing to me wasn't that the offense didn't do anything until the second half. It was just how badly the defense was exploited. We know that this Alabama defense isn't the Alabama defenses of past seasons. We know that. The A&M offense is not this high. It's not Ole Miss. Okay? And after seeing how that Ole Miss game played out, it again, like we talked about with the Patriots, you wonder if, Lane always builds up the Bama game. That's what Lane does. Okay, which obviously fuels Bama. And it wouldn't surprise me if Saban takes some of the Lane quotes and puts it up in the locker room to get those guys up even a little more. Did we potentially have a letdown spot here after winning the Ole Miss game, winning it the way they did, where it just didn't end up being anything remotely close to a game? Did it take them that half to kind of all of a sudden wake up and go, oh, crap, we're playing A&M and they're whipping us? And then the hole was just a little too deep to dig out of. That's what I'm looking at this game a little more as. Not so much that Alabama was exploited, because I don't think anything was exploited that we didn't already know. Like you said, I mean, we've seen Bryce struggle with certain situations. We've seen that defense, where the holes are. I think it was just a perfect tornado in that first half to let A&M get up big. And then special teams certainly didn't help either. And it was just a great convolute of things that didn't ultimately end up in Bama's way. I mean, I think it says more about Bama that there they were at the end of the game. It was tied, and had the defense given a little more of a stand, they maybe come back and win that game. But they don't. Getting to the top 25, however, is a whole other issue. Because not only is this top 25 a mess, they're telling you that we know how we want this playoff to look. That's what this is telling me. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about it's still too early to kind of figure out how this playoff will look, blah, blah, blah. We got a pretty good idea how it looks now. Because here's your top. I'm not even going to go through the whole top 25. Let's just look at the top 8. So the top 4, okay, if the playoff were today, Georgia and Iowa are 1-2. Cincy's all the way up to 3, and Oklahoma, after that Red River rivalry miracle, is at 4. Okay, and I mean, all the talk about Texas being back. Yeah, Texas needs to know how to play with a lead to be back. Okay, because they just opened the door wide open for Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. As somebody who has had Oklahoma, thank you. But I mean, what a joke. 5 is Bama, 6 is Ohio State, 7 is Penn State, 8 is Michigan. You remember last week I said I'm buying Michigan. I think Michigan is legit. This is the week that would prove it. Mm-hmm. Michigan wins. Mm-hmm. I said I don't think Penn State wins in Iowa. Penn State not only doesn't win in Iowa, they choke away the lead.
When your quarterback's injured, I still say if he didn't go out in the first half, Penn State wins that game.
Well, okay, and I'm sure that's also what the committee's playing into, because as far as I'm concerned, the fact that Penn State's ahead of Michigan is a joke right now.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, Cincy being a 3 is all well and good right now, but as I said last week, there's no way in hell Cincy's in the top 4. Okay? Not with who they're playing. Yeah. Okay? They have nobody worth a damn left. All right? They're playing UCF this week. Okay? Right? Like UCF and SMU are the biggest 2 games left. Okay? They need all of those teams, Bama, OSU, Penn State, Michigan, to lose to stay in there. Okay? That's the only way Cincy finds a way in, because it's not happening. All right? Now, I think you and I can agree Oklahoma, we're still not buying. Oklahoma continues to have a week situation of just getting by the skin of their teeth.
Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and I could totally see a situation where Oklahoma gets the Big 12 title game, and that's where they trip, and that will ultimately get them out of the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm not buying Oklahoma. So that leaves 2 spots for the playoffs. All right, because I think Georgia is obviously a lock, and I think Iowa is a lock.
As long as Iowa wins, Iowa I see running the table at this point to the Big Ten.
Yeah, they're gonna have to win the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, if they lose the Big Ten championship, they're out.
Yeah, probably depends on who they play and how it plays out.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they play like an undefeated Michigan team, whoever wins is going.
Iowa, Michigan. Okay, if that's a close game, depending how other things play out, both teams could get in conceivably. I mean, if they're both undefeated, okay. I mean, look at this. All right, you've got the undefeated Georgia, Iowa, Cincy, Oklahoma, Michigan. Okay, of your top 8, those are your 5 undefeateds. Then you've got a 1-loss Penn State, a 1-loss OSU, and a 1-loss Bama. Penn State is the odd man out. All right, they need Iowa or Michigan to fall. Okay, because if neither of them fall, Penn State's got nothing to play for, and it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Okay, I told you OSU was lurking. Okay, as long as OSU doesn't trip up, they'll end up in the conference title game. And I think LSU is sitting there waiting for somebody to trip up and get in. I think OSU still finds a way in. And as far as Bama, I still see a situation where, as good as Georgia has looked and whatnot, Bama finds a way to win the SEC.
It's possible.
So
it's unlikely, but it's possible.
I'm of the belief that until I see it happen, I can't rule it out. It's like it's akin to like all those years where the Yankees made the playoffs, right? And then when the Yankees were hovering around not making playoffs, you can't believe the Yankees don't make the playoffs until they don't. Just like all those years where the Yankees would get in the playoffs and then all of a sudden they were in the World Series. Like, you can't believe the Yankees aren't a threat until they're not a threat anymore.
Right.
And this is the same thing with Bama. Okay, that's what Saban's built here. I can't trust Bama not to win a big game until I see them not win a big game. Okay, like the national championships they haven't won, it's been because another guy has just played out of his mind. It's a Trevor Lawrence. It's a
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, Deshaun, like somebody just going above and beyond. All right, Georgia's offense is still a question mark.
Yeah.
So I still have to side with Saban in that game. So if Cincy and Oklahoma are out, Bama and Ohio State are in. And so you're looking at, okay, unless Saban suddenly steamrolls Georgia, all right, I think Georgia's safe, right? So you could have Bama and Georgia in, all right, and then it's a question for OSU of, all right, are Iowa and Michigan undefeated, and how does that game play out? Is there room for Ohio State to sneak in? That's your playoff. That's it right now. Okay, you need somebody to stumble along the way for something to change. Cincy needs a whole lot of stumbles to stay in. Cincy at 3 is not real. It's a nice facade for those people who want a non-Power 5 team in the playoff, but it's not real. It's not happening. Okay? Like I said, that 4 through 8 is set up perfectly for them to just wait it out, and then they can fit it in. All right, and as was mentioned in the chat, okay, we sit here and talk about Notre Dame because Notre Dame's my team, and Notre Dame has the QB issues and blah, 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 blah. By the way, Jack Cohn leading the comeback this week in Blacksburg. Thank you very much. Oklahoma's the top 4 team in the nation. Spencer Rattler had all this Heisman hype. They look better with Rattler out. I mean, you can't – how am I supposed to buy into Oklahoma when they continually have to pull Rattler out of games and go to the backup?
It's sad, really. Like, Rattler, I don't know if it was just, again, another like game plan situation where you're playing for Rattler, so then when Rattler's out of the game, you don't really have a game plan for the backup, and backup comes out and surprises you. It definitely could be that kind of situation. So I'm not totally sold on, yes, they did look better with Rattler out, but that just could be, one of the uncertainties with college football, and just like, well, he showed up, he picked up when he needed to, but we can't necessarily say that he's immediately better than Rattler. Rattler's not as good as the backup is, but Rattler definitely lost Heisman. He lost Heisman potential with that.
Well, forget the Heisman. And I'm not saying that he's better than Rattler. What I'm saying is I can't trust the team. I mean,
True.
Like I said, before Notre Dame lost, to Cincy. Okay, every week we had the chat, and we can't trust Notre Dame. Forget Notre Dame playoff history. I mean, that's the reason why we really can't take them. But you can't trust a team that's got a QB issue, right? Like we don't take NFL teams that have two quarterbacks, that are running two quarterbacks seriously. So how am I going to take the top 4 team in the nation who has a quarterback situation? Like Spencer Rattler hasn't shown me anything that he can win a big game. Okay, again, that Texas game is won because of Texas, not because of anything Oklahoma did. Texas tried to sit on the ball and stop being aggressive and let Oklahoma come back into that game.
Sarkisian pulled a Saban without having Saban ability in coaching.
I expected more out of Sark. Okay, I thought that game was dead and buried, and Texas was running away because Oklahoma did everything they could in the opening 10 minutes to let Texas run out to a big lead and say this game was yours. And then Sark basically came out in the second half and said, we're good, sit on the ball, I don't need you to do anything. And then all of a sudden, here came Oklahoma, and then by the time Sark tried to run it back up, it was too late.
Yep. Real quick, I just want to touch on the whole Michigan and Iowa thing. Here's what Michigan's schedule looks like through the rest of the season.
I would say it's not easy.
It's not. So they got Northwestern on Saturday. Saturday the 23rd. So they have a bye week. They're off this week. So after Northwestern, they've got Michigan State, who's at number 10 right now. Always a tough game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the rankings are. That's always,
Yeah. Just Michigan State's always a tough game. So you've got that. Then after that, they get Indiana. So Indiana conference game. Indiana's not the Indiana of last year. They're not really that strong. That should be the easiest game they have left.
Also, I think Michigan has, because of last year and how Indiana ran through that, everybody's got a little built up revenge factor for Indiana coming through.
For sure. After Indiana, they've got Penn State. So, like we said, Penn State's the odd man out. So
that's the Penn State game. Okay, you hope Clifford is healthy by then. I don't know the extent of Clifford's injury, so I don't know. Right. Hopefully Penn State can weather the storm here. Okay, and then you have a one-loss Penn State against, potentially an undefeated or maybe a one-loss Michigan, and then that'll settle that.
Yep. And then I suppose this is the actual easiest game on their schedule. After Penn State, they've got Maryland, so they get Baby Tua, who's been underperforming. The Maryland team looked good early, but not great.
I would say Baby Tua had Iowa and Ohio State on back-to-back weeks. Not a fun time for Baby Tua.
No, and now getting Michigan towards the end of the year is still not going to be fun for him.
But here's not to go off from what we're talking about, but since you brought up Baby Tua, all right, it was Ohio State. Okay, I'm not saying it. Baby Tua didn't if you're watching just him, he didn't look bad. I mean, there was nothing he could do against that juggernaut. I mean, he's just run up against two behemoths the last 2 weeks that have made him look small. But I still stand by what I said. Baby Tua is better than the real Tua.
I agree. It's just he's not getting a lot of help right now.
No, and the hype will never be around Baby Tua that was around Tua.
Not because he's at Maryland. If he would have stayed at Alabama, he'd be getting all the hype. But I digress.
Well, Nick didn't like Baby Tua, so he had to go.
Well, of course he didn't. Baby Tua was riding his brother's coattails and believing all that hype, and Nick Saban's not that guy. It's the same reason why Alvin Kamara left. Alvin Kamara had all of his own hype, and Saban was not about that. So that's a different story. And then they close out the year before a potential championship game with Ohio State. So if Michigan gets through all of that and plays an undefeated Iowa team, they're both.
But this is what I'm saying. So Michigan, all right, as far as that 5 through 8, Michigan can eliminate 2 by themselves. They can get rid of Penn State and Ohio State.
Yep.
Okay.
If they do that, they're getting in for sure.
Yeah, I'm saying if for some reason Michigan, first off, if Michigan somehow runs this table, okay, the question of is Michigan legit, you can throw out. I think if Michigan gets to the Ohio State game undefeated, you can throw that question out. Okay, if they get through Michigan State and Penn State, all right, the question's been answered. I think the question has been answered. I think Michigan has passed enough tests at this point that you can say they are legit. I mean, losing to Penn State or Ohio State doesn't knock their legitness. Even Michigan State, that's a tough in-state game. Yeah. So I don't know that. I mean, they should win that game. I'm not giving them a pass, but I don't think you can't knock Michigan for that. But Michigan completely controls their own destiny. They're going to have 2 games against 2 of the teams that are waiting for them to fall to try and take care of that. But yes, if they run the table, the game against Iowa, I really don't think means much of anything, because if them and Iowa are undefeated. All right, so let's do it this way. All right, Georgia's undefeated, Iowa's undefeated, Cincinnati's undefeated. Let's say Oklahoma loses the Big 12 championship game. Okay, Bama beats Georgia in the SEC championship. So you've got 1 loss Bama, 1 loss Georgia, a 1 loss Oklahoma, and then either Iowa or Michigan are undefeated, and then one of them have 1 loss. So who are you going out of the 4? I still think it's Georgia, Bama, Iowa, Michigan.
Yep. Yeah, I would
because agree. I can make a whole lot better case for Iowa than I can for Oklahoma. And since he's not matching up against any of the 1-loss teams, I'm sorry. No. The only win you have on your resume is Notre Dame. That's it.
Yeah, unless by some miracle, some team that they end up playing gets ranked.
Well, I mean, SMU is a fringe 25 team. So, I mean, yeah, SMU might be ranked when they play them. But, I mean, I don't
They're not going to be –
that's not going to be a rubber stamp on the resume.
Right. Like, you beat the only 2 ranked teams that you played. Good for you. Like, and they're not – Notre Dame being Notre Dame this year, I mean, if this was the BCS, it would look a lot better than it does, like, for us with our eyes right now. So that's not super helpful. I would agree. If everything kind of shakes out that way, I'm not sold that Alabama beats Georgia. I'm really not. That defense concerns me. But if they did,
I know why you're not, and I'm telling you why everybody who is not a Bama fan is not going to get off that train. Okay? Here's the thing. If this thing plays out and you've got an undefeated Georgia against a 1-loss Bama, all right, when we get to that game, I would not be stunned if Bama's favored. I think Bama might still be favored. If Georgia's favored, it's going to be a small line. And then I guarantee you, every Joe Schmo that walks into the sports book is going to look up at that board and going to see a plus next to Alabama money line. And everybody's going to hammer Alabama money line. Everybody.
Yeah. All right. I guess as the fan, that's like, this isn't a team that I see as a championship caliber team. My perspective on it is that
here's the thing. Here's the best comparison I can give you. You're the Alabama fan that has seen everything go right. So now that you've seen a couple of cracks in the armor, you're a little skeptical about how things will go. Whereas I'm a Met fan and everything can be going right. Yet I know somewhere along the road, it's all going to fall down. It's all going to fall down. Because that's how it always plays out. For Alabama, it always ends up good. For the Mets, it always ends up bad. So no matter if the roles are reversed, neither of us are going to buy it.
Yeah, that's fair. I suppose I kind of look at it the exact opposite I do with the Vikings. The Vikings can be playing out of their mind, and I'm like, they're going to mess it up. Like, yeah, there's no way. Yeah, so I feel you. I hear you. All right. Anything else you want to cover in college football? I figure we're going to do picks at the end of the show tonight. So is there any other games that you want to talk about from last week?
No. I mean, like I said, I touched on it. We talked about last week going into Blacksburg on a Saturday night a tough game for Notre Dame. I wasn't sure how they would look. All the talk in this chat and between us about is it Cone or it wasn't either. It wasn't either. They went with the third string. Okay. And it was a game that they were in for a majority. They were leading at the half. They fell behind. And then here's Jack Cone in the fourth quarter. Leads the comeback. Virginia Tech with a couple of questionable decisions that probably aided. But nevertheless, as we've talked about before in college, a win is a win. You just try and win and move on. And no matter how it is, it's a win in Blacksburg on a Saturday night. And again, I keep wanting to poke at Cincinnati, but I'll do it anyway. A win on a Saturday night in Blacksburg is better than anything on the Cincinnati resume. And that includes beating Notre Dame.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. So we've got two more topics before we get to picks tonight. And they're both relatively quick. So I want to touch on the we talked about this last week with Kyrie and Ben Simmons. So the Nets have made a decision that Kyrie is not going to be allowed to be with the team until he starts following I believe it's New York City's personal COVID restrictions, where you have to have at least one COVID shot to enter any kind of gymnasium or anything like that, which they consider the Barclays Center.
Basically, what's happened is there are a couple of states, New York, Los Angeles being two of them. There's another one where they have state protocols where you have to be somewhat vaccinated to be in what they deem public areas. And then what had happened was earlier in the week, or I should say, I guess it was over the weekend or late last week, the New York State came out and deemed that the Nets practice facility was actually private property, which would allow Kyrie to then practice. Can't play in games still, but he could at least practice. So there was the question, would Kyrie start to practice? What would that do? And then there was the conversation, we have heard Durant and Harden come out and say some things, and then there was, ultimately, what would that look like? There was even talk, I was watching First Take on Friday, and Jay Williams was making the remark to Stephen A about, everybody's got their elections coming up. New York has their election coming up, and apparently there's a African-American running, and he could be the first guy in office. And apparently him and the Nets owner have a pretty tight relationship. And he was saying that if he got office, would the Nets owner try and use that pull to maybe get an exception made to allow Kyrie to play? Stephen A then also said, Stephen A's remark was, if I had that chip, I wouldn't use that chip on Kyrie. But whatever, we get where the road was coming, which made the public property thing even that more interesting following that. But then it comes out today that Kyrie's coming nowhere near us. We don't want him at practice. Obviously he can't be at games until Kyrie kind of comes into the program and does what he needs to do. He's not going to be a part of this team. And that firmly tells me that there was a conversation with KD and with Harden that said, what do you want to do? Do you want this guy around, or do you want him kind of off on the thing until he gets with the program? And they said, listen, if he can't play, I don't want him here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Which ultimately leads to what I said before. There were reports that they could have dealt him in the offseason, and KD shut that down.
Mm-hmm.
KD's got to be regretting it now because
Absolutely.
you got to find a way to do it. You can't have him there. He's no use. And he's got less. I think he's got as much, if not less trade value than Ben Simmons.
At this point, yeah.
But you got to find somebody willing to take him, which there is nobody. Stephen A said he talked to execs. Nobody will go near him. Nobody. So they're stuck in a mess.
So, I mean, you look at this from, let's say, KD's perspective here. So KD, as you pointed out, KD wanted Kyrie. He had options to get other people. He wanted Kyrie. So in the reports that are coming out, they've said we've talked to KD, we've talked to Harden, but at the end of the day, this was our decision. Now, when I hear that, and I hear KD trying to get him there and keep him there and everything, I see this as the perfect excuse for KD if the Nets underperform.
So I've got my rebuttal to that.
Okay.
And if the Nets, regardless of what happens with the Nets this year, okay, remember Harden's contract is up after this year.
Yep.
Okay. Do you not think that Daryl Morey, who thought he was getting James Harden for Ben Simmons last year when Harden eventually got dealt to the Nets, doesn't want James Harden with Joel Embiid? Okay, and Harden and Morey already have that relationship. Okay, if Harden looks around and says, this is a mess, I want no part of this. I thought I was teaming up with KD and Kyrie's a head case, and this is just whatever. I can go there. I know I've got Joel. I know Daryl's going to give me, a competent team around me. I'm out. Now KD's looking around in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. All right, Harden is gone. Kyrie is whatever Kyrie is. I'm not saying that Durant can't attract people, but I'm of the belief that KD, not to the extent, mind you, but KD is a little like LeBron. KD's the follower, not the leader. Like, Remember, when LeBron went to Miami, that was Wade's team, and he had the conversation to make sure Wade would come back, and they made sure Bosh was coming. Like, he made sure all that was taken care of before he finally committed to Miami.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And when KD went to Brooklyn, KD was going to Brooklyn because Kyrie was coming. And then, obviously, they made the deal for Harden. So, KD's looking around, and he's got nothing. All right? Now, we haven't seen KD with the quote-unquote attracting free agents there. I'm not saying he doesn't have the pull, but we haven't seen it. We've seen KD go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And Stephen A brought this up, and it's just Stephen A doing it because Stephen A wishes this to happen, and I don't think it would happen. But I can make a case for it, and I'm going to get somebody in the chat excited by bringing up this idea.
Oh, I know where you're going with this. Okay.
He thought about going there before he went to Brooklyn. It's just a short walk across a couple of islands, and you can say what you want, but it is still the mecca of basketball. You look at the Knicks situation, and the Knicks situation has a lot more going for it than Brooklyn does right now.
Yeah.
And
they look a lot better.
Wait, hold on. I gotta put that. Okay, he's gonna say this, so I'm just gonna put this up. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
He's got to be trolling. He has to.
So remember when the Knicks were in the playoffs last year against Atlanta? Okay, and Trae Young basically made MSG and Knicks fans his bitch. And when the Knicks were actually in games, they were looking for somebody to make a shot, and Julius Randle was on a milk carton, and they had nobody. You know who would fill that? Kevin Durant. You have Kevin Durant, you're not losing to Trae Young. Like, I don't want him. Give me a break. I don't want him.
We're not talking about Harden. Okay.
We're talking about Harden.
We're talking about KD. We're not talking about Harden.
I like how people watch the show and don't pay attention to when we talk. This is the same thing he did last week. I had to bring up 4 comments where he wasn't paying attention to anything we said.
He's got ADD, man. We got to treat him with kid gloves sometimes. But on that one, ADD. He's got ED. Yeah, he does. Yeah, that's for sure. One thing with that too, and we've talked about it with you bringing up Harden going to Philly. because he has the ability to play with Embiid there. Like, yeah, sure, go play with Embiid, get Simmons out of there. You know that you have a core of players at least. But what's been the issue with Philly, other than Ben Simmons, is the fact that their front office doesn't know what they're doing. If I'm James Harden, that is a huge issue for me.
No. Hold on. Their front office was a question before Daryl Morey got there. All right, Morey did a lot of things last year to help that team. He brought in shooters, which they need, and blah, blah, blah. I don't think anybody's questioning Daryl Morey. Okay, and you got Doc Rivers. I mean, that whole structure is a lot different than it was 2-3 years ago. I mean, this isn't the structure that did the process.
Right.
Okay, they got to get the Ben Simmons situation figured out, which we'll touch on here momentarily. But that's, because like we said, all right, you've got what is obviously a frayed relationship with Joel Embiid, and you have a team that, according to Joel Embiid, is built for Ben Simmons. So, gives me a thought.
Yeah. So, no, go ahead.
No. I'll get to it when we touch on the other end of this.
Well, I was just going to get to that. I was going to say, do you want to carry your thought into the Ben Simmons side?
Yes.
Now, I haven't followed too much on the Ben Simmons thing because honestly, I'm just tired of hearing his name and seeing him.
Okay, so here I'll catch you up. Ben is in Philly.
Okay.
Ben is basically back with the team. They are trying. Basically, Ben's representation, aka Rich Paul, is all right. I'm gonna have to answer this schmuck in the chat at some point, but basically, Rich Paul is basically trying to work out something with the Sixers in which Ben comes back and is able to recoup something. All right, he's trying to. It's damage control, but essentially, Ben's back. Ben's going to play. All right, Ben's holdout lasted about as long as an NFL player's. All right, it went real well.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, this is ultimately what needed to happen for both parties. Ben could never hold out, and the Sixers need Ben to play because they need Ben to show something so that they can get not what they're asking for, but they can get reasonable value back. So, thought. There was something floated out about basically swapping malcontents with Kyrie and Simmons, which the Sixers want no part of Kyrie for very good reason.
Yes.
However, if you're the Sixers, okay, and you've done all this trying to move Simmons, and you've kind of gotten an idea of what teams are willing to give you, the Andrew Wiggins and the Chris LeVerts of the world, getting a cripple is always a good idea. So you've got a decent idea of what you can get in a trade for Ben Simmons. What if we reverse it? What if I go to Brooklyn? Okay, and I think Brooklyn's got to have some sort of idea of where Harden stands as far as being there long term. I think they've had to at least touched on it somewhat. Maybe not gone full on deep, but just a general conversation of, hey, do you want to have some kind of conversation about, potentially re-upping, or whatever. They have a general idea. What if the Sixers go, listen, we know you've got Harden for a year. Maybe you're not sure what the long-term plan is. We've got Ben locked up here. What can we do? Because here's the thing. Without Kyrie, remember, when the Nets brought Harden over and Kyrie was basically out or not wanting to play or whatever Space Jam thing he wanted to do, they made Harden into a point guard, which suddenly turned Harden around. Harden looked like a distributor, looked like a lot better player, like did things that we didn't know James Harden could do. Whether or not that carries over remains to be seen. I don't know if that's a long-term thing or if that was Ben is a point guard. Ben is a distributor, a defender. We know he can do that. What we don't know that he can do is shoot, whether it be 2 feet under the rim or outside the 3-point line, despite what his Instagram shows us. So can Daryl Morey convince Brooklyn to at least have the conversation? Because while you're losing Harden, okay, and I'm not saying it to be a straight swap, okay, I'm sure Philly would have to add in for that, despite the fact that Brooklyn's getting the long-term asset here and Philly's taking the chance on a short-term Harden, I'm sure Philly would want to try and have some sort of idea of whether they can re-up. But regardless, could they get Brooklyn to engage? Because from a Durant standpoint, I'm losing Harden, but I'm getting a facilitator. And I'm getting somebody that can defend. So now, think of the length you could have on a backcourt with KD and Simmons defending.
Yeah, but look at bringing in another problem child. Do you really want Kyrie and Ben Simmons on the same team? Like, you really want to deal with both headaches that they're going to cause? Because that to me would be the issue that I have, is the personality type. I don't know that that's something KD is going to want more of. Like, you got rid of Harden and gave me another problem child. Like, I don't know that that's going to be something he'd be thrilled with.
But Ben's problem isn't, I think KD can relate to Ben. Because Ben's problem isn't Kyrie. I mean, Ben's not a head case. Ben, much like Kyrie, is insensitive. Okay, he doesn't want to be in Philly because Philly doesn't love him. Philly doesn't appreciate him. Philly booed him. Okay, Philly blames him for all their problems. Okay, you want to blame me? Fine. I don't want to be here. Get me out of here. I'm not the problem. Okay? Ben could take some advice from KD. Get a burner account. Like I said, I think KD can relate to Ben a lot more than to Kyrie. I mean, nobody wants Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie is just on his own world. Ben's not a problem child. You put Ben on the court, okay, and KD puts his arm around him and tells him, hey, I'm the guy. And here's the thing, too. Ben going to Brooklyn, there's no debate about whose team that is. It's KD's team. Okay, Ben's Robin to Batman.
Mm-hmm.
In Philly, even up until last year, there was always the debate about whose team this was. Is it Ben's team? Is it Joel's team? Joel's got the health problems. Can Ben shoot? I mean, it was always a debate. It wasn't until last year when Joel had an MVP type season that it was finally Joel's team.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ben obviously didn't help things, and then but no, I think Ben and KD work a lot better. I think Ben and KD share similar things. I think they relate to each other. And again, it's not going to fall on Ben in Brooklyn. They're going to ask Ben to do what Ben does. Okay? And who better to get out of Ben Simmons what Ben Simmons does well than Steve Nash?
It's true. I suppose I didn't factor Steve Nash into it. That's
okay? Not to mention, all right, now Steve Nash was a great shooter. He's an underrated shooter. All right? I don't think people realize how good of a shooter Steve Nash was. Steve Nash gets in Ben's head, okay, and even makes Ben somewhat confident in the shot or gets a little bit out. All of a sudden, you unlock what the Sixers couldn't. I think Steve Nash is more of a key to unlocking Ben than KD is. I'm not saying this has happened, but I think it's intriguing to think about.
It's intriguing, I'll give you that. I suppose not factoring in the Steve Nash. I guess I never really put 2 and 2 together with KD, and then having that similar personality, I guess that would make sense. Yeah, I suppose that could be beneficial. I just think I'm trying to consider what else Philly would be willing to give up
Picks?
In that situation. Yeah, it would have to be picks, and it can't be conditional picks. It has to be just picks straight up.
Well, I mean, if you're Philly and you're giving up a pick, what are you giving? You get 20 to 25, 25 to 30. I mean, it's a late first, right? You expect that you're going to be a contender in the East.
Yeah. I think it would have to be Ben Simmons and a first for sure.
Maybe
conditional.
Ben, probably another player, a shooter of some type, whether it be, a Seth Curry, or if they got to give up one of the kids like Maxey or somebody, and then, and then maybe a pick or two, maybe that gets the conversation going.
If you did Simmons, Maxey, and a first, I think they would probably entertain it. At least they would talk about it.
I would say it's something to get the conversation started.
All right, so moving on from basketball, because who cares about basketball? And as the current fantasy football basketball champion amongst our group.
Football basketball champion? I don't think that's a real thing.
Fantasy basketball. My bad. As the current fantasy basketball champion and a man who never watches basketball, I can say we've talked about basketball enough for one day.
Yeah, you were very good at the guessing game.
Yeah, numbers, man. I'm an investigator. I know numbers. It's fine. We're going to move on to what was the highlight of my weekend, and I think in a lot of ways the best boxing match we've seen in quite some time in Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder 3. Now, I know you watched it, and I watched it as well. I was really happy to see that it was actually competitive, and mainly because I don't want to hear any more Deontay Wilder excuses. I was so tired of excuses from him. But you could tell he actually came out. He wanted to win. He trained the right way. He looked really good. He got knockdowns. Pretty sure he had a 10-7 round, if I remember the scorecard right.
Yeah, fourth round.
Yeah, fourth round was 10-7. After, because he knocked Fury down twice, and then Fury had knocked him down once before.
Okay, so Fury got him in the third.
Yeah.
And then Wilder responded with the 2 in the fourth.
Yep. So I know Fury got the 10-8 in the third, and then Wilder got the 10-7 in the fourth. And I was like, okay, we have an actual fight now. Like early on, it looked like it was going to be Fury the whole way. And then Wilder came back in that fourth and said, no, I'm actually here to fight tonight, and I can hurt you. Now, Wilder's always kind of had that. Not Wilder, sorry. Fury has always been the more elusive heavyweight at 6'9", being able to move with his footwork and everything. To see him get caught showed that Deontay actually put a lot into it. He's very predictable with his punches, in my opinion, but he put up a good fight. And the fact that he went down in the 11th, and it wasn't that he just got knocked down, but he got his lights shut off. That was a perfect cap to that fight, in my opinion. How did you look at that fight, and what did you like about it?
I think that from the Wilder perspective, he in the early going, and I saw somebody put up a scorecard through the first 5 rounds and showed some scoring, and I like, you and me were having a conversation before the show about MMA, about doing with boxing, about open scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Like there needed to be open scoring for this fight, because what the judges saw and what I saw, and even with the CompuBox stats they were putting up, shows the disconnect in what the judges see and what I see and what the stats show. Because in those first 2 rounds, Wilder threw a lot of punches. He showed he was very active. He was working the body and all of that. He wasn't landing nearly enough of those. I mean, in that first round, he threw, I think it was like a 4-1 count as far as punches thrown by Wilder to Fury, and yet Fury landed more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just he's faking you out with the eyes. He's throwing a lot of stuff that's not landing, and you're buying it. Like we see this in MMA sometimes too, where like just because you're active, you win a round. It's not so much that like you actually landed anything.
Mm-hmm.
2 big flaws for Wilder in this fight early on, and I think which caught up to him, especially after the 4th. I think the 4th basically killed him. And then by the time we got to the 6th, it was way done.
Yeah.
You bring up Fury. He's 6'9". He has a 50-pound weight advantage on Deontay Wilder. The last thing Deontay Wilder wants to do is get in the clutch with Tyson Fury and carry that weight around.
Mm-hmm.
So what does Wilder do? He engages the clutch. He's the one putting his arm around Tyson Fury. So he's constantly carrying that 50 pounds around. Okay? So every round, and you know, the longer and longer you're carrying, it's going to weigh on you more and more and more and more. Okay? And then you add in whatever shots you're taking. The fourth round, he knocks down Fury the first time. Fury gets up at the 9 count. Okay? Wilder's thinking, okay, he's close. Like, I had him right there. Now he gets him again. He's thinking, I'm good. Again, Fury gets up at the 9 count, survives the round. In Wilder's head, he's going, that was my shot. That was my shot. I got him twice. I got him to the 9 count twice, and this guy still got up. By the 6th round, after round 6, he went back to that corner. He was breathing so heavily on that chair. Fury didn't even want to sit. And Wilder's breathing heavily. And I said, this fight is over. This fight is over. And what you saw in the next few rounds is they would go to the clutch and Wilder would just lean on Fury, basically for Fury to hold him up because he couldn't stand. All right. Before he gets knocked out in the 11th, in the, I forget exactly, 9th or 10th round, Fury knocked him down. It might have been the 10th because I think he knocked him out in the following. But he knocks him out. He knocks him down in the 10th where they're kind of in the clutch. And Wilder goes to kind of give him a little bit of a hook. Fury slides it, comes back from underneath, and pops him right in the ear so hard. Wilder basically lifts up from the mat and then collapses. All right, I thought that would end it, but Wilder, to his credit, got up. But you could tell he was out because for the rest of the 10th round, Fury beat the hell out of him, and then in the 11th, he got the crap kicked out of him until the ref finally stepped in. I know, especially after fight 2, that Wilder, which is why he fired his, his corner man. He made it a point nobody to throw in the towel.
Mm-hmm.
The towel needed to be thrown. Would have saved a whole lot of punishment because there's no reason that fight should have went to 11. Okay, if you want to tell me, well, he got the 10 before he got knocked down. All well and good. I think could have been stopped in 8 or 9. He couldn't stand. He couldn't stand. He had no shot. He was basically begging to get to the cars to at least say he got to the end, and he couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that we've known this about Deontay Wilder, though. Deontay Wilder is the heavyweight that has the punching power. He's the guy that he knocks you out whenever he wants to. He just works his setup. As soon as he gets his punch, you're done. So that's why when he knocked down, as you pointed out, he knocks down Fury twice in the 4th round. That was his shot. Fury, being Fury, is just a monster and basically a goddamn zombie, just continues to get back up. And I look at it as something completely beyond boxing and fighting when it comes to how Tyson Fury was able to get up both times in that round. For me, and I don't know how much you know about like Tyson Fury and his story, but like he was undefeated and fought for so long, and then he fell into alcoholism and depression and suicidal thoughts, and he was in a bad way for a couple of years. And he was pushing, I believe, he was over 400 pounds at one point, and all he was doing was drinking and eating like shit. He wasn't training or doing anything, and he finally decided to get back into shape to fight Deontay Wilder that first time. And I think that those 2 knockdowns in that 4th round was him kind of remembering what he did and how hard he worked to get out of that place, to get to where he is now, that there was no way he was going to stay down. There was no way he wasn't going to finish this fight. And I think after that 4th round, when he got up, as you said, like Deontay missed his shot. That was his chance. He missed it. Same thing with Tyron Woodley with Jake Paul. He had the ability to finish it and didn't. Same thing happened to Wilder here. Wilder had the chance, missed a shot, and it was just whenever Fury decided it was going to be over at that point, it was over. Because, I mean, Fury could have ended it at any point. When he saw that Wilder was gassed, he could have turned it on at any time. So I think he was just recovering a little bit too. He definitely got hurt by those knockdowns, but he was just biding his time. Once he knocked him in the 10th and got that good stinger, and you just see his whole body just tighten up, like after that, he knew he had it. And it was just a matter of, okay, I'm going to finish you next round. Like, I let you get this far. Now it's time to be done. The question that I have now, though, is because this has taken so long, this has been several years where it's just been Fury and Wilder, and Fury's had like one other fight in this time frame. I really feel like, and because of Anthony Joshua's situation where he's lost to Ruiz and now just lost to Usyk, did we miss out on what could have been the best like heavyweight boxing tournament of all time?
Well, first off, just going back to what you were saying about Fury,
Yeah,
you know, they had mentioned it before the fight, and I think that, you know, him getting up on those two knockdowns was really a more of a show of it. Here was a guy who, you know, in Wilder, who didn't start fighting until his early mid-20s, and a guy in Fury who basically was fighting as soon as he came out of the womb. I mean, that's all he's done. And I think that was, you know, that's like Fury gets knocked, okay, unless you completely knock him out. If he comes to and he still hears a count, he's getting up. Like, he's just not going to stay down. And Wilder just, you know, and I think these Fury fights have shown it. He's just not a complete heavyweight. All right. He doesn't have the gas tank. He's completely reliant on that punch power. He is, you know, he has run through all these guys with that punch, you know, with that knockout power. And, you know, somebody who can take that power or match that power and take him into the deep rounds will always beat him out. Always. Until he changes, which he hasn't shown. I mean, he had 3 fights and he didn't change. So, you know, he hasn't shown that he's willing to change. As far as the Joshua thing, let me see if I took the picture, because I saw something, because I knew we were going to talk about this, and I thought it was interesting. Here we go. So, pound for pound rankings right now. It was just released today, actually. Joshua is 7th in the world. Fury is 3. Saul Alvarez is number 1, and Golovkin is 2.
okay.
You got Earl Spence is at 4. Terrence Crawford is at 6. Lopez is right behind. Joshua is at 8. You know, just for perspective. It's hard for me to say that we missed, you know, the great matchup, because you look at who Joshua has lost to recently. And I mean, I don't think reasonably you or I would take either of those guys and put them on Fury's level. So if I can't do that, and I want to go down this road of a Joshua Fury fight, what was ultimately going to happen to Joshua? I mean, are you telling me I'm going to get similar to what we just saw with Wilder, where Joshua gives him a good fight and ultimately loses? I mean, okay, great, but what good does that do?
No, I think it's a completely different fight, though, and that's the thing. So Joshua is not the same style fighter as Deontay Wilder. He's more Fury.
I get where you're going with that.
Yeah, so he's more Fury-esque than he is Wilder-esque. So you're seeing a guy in Anthony Joshua who is probably the most physically fit boxer in the heavyweight division. He has the agility, he has the ability to move in and out and everything like that. I feel like, I mean, and Joshua has 3 belts, so he's really, it's more the fact that you've got the American in Deontay Wilder, this hard-hitting, hard-knocks American who doesn't back down, who throws with reckless abandon at times, against the 2 Englishmen. You've got the 2 Brits, in Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. And you have these 3 guys who, I mean, at the time when this all started, Wilder was undefeated, Fury was undefeated, and I believe Joshua may have been undefeated or only had like 1 loss at the time. So you're talking about 3 of them that are in their prime. This is like, Canelo. If Canelo was Canelo now, fighting Floyd Mayweather is kind of the situation that you're looking at when it comes to the heavyweight division. And so now, if Wilder if the first fight between Wilder and Fury, Wilder knocks out Fury, just knocks him out cold like he did, and Fury doesn't get up, you're talking about the biggest heavyweight boxing pay-per-view in history at that point. You've got the American versus the Brit for the unification. They're both young in their prime. And then, you throw Tyson Fury in the mix, who had the championship before. He's been a heavyweight contender. He beat the Klitschko's, which nobody had done really in a long time. So you had that. Now you have Tyson Fury, who is, as you said, he's number 3 on that list behind Canelo and Gennady Golovkin, who both deservedly deserve to be where they are. But you have arguably now the best heavyweight of all time in Tyson Fury, and he doesn't get to have another big fight anymore. Like he can fight Joshua to unify the titles, but it's lost its shine because of Usyk and Ruiz.
Here's the other thing about the Joshua fight. Okay, and I get what you're saying about stylistically, he's a lot different than Wilder. He's a lot more like Fury, which would make the fight a lot different, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, Joshua would run into the same problem that Wilder did, in that, what is Joshua going to come into that fight weighing? 220, 230?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, Fury's still going to come in 50 pounds heavier. Okay, mm-hmm. And Joshua can do whatever he wants. I mean, Joshua can be as elusive as he, but Fury's still going to get in because Fury's going to have the reach. Okay, Fury's always going to have the reach. Okay, so Fury's going to get in, and he's just going to put all that weight on him, all the weight on him. Okay.
Can we? I want you to pull up that. I want you to pull up that comment from the scout here real quick. His most recent one.
The one that I'm kind of referring to here about
Yeah, since that's what you're referring to. I hate people that say this. Let me tell you why. If the guy that weighs 225 is upset about the guy at the heavyweight division weighing in at the max weight, drop down to a lower weight class or put on weight. Make yourself compatible in that division. If this is the division that you want to fight in, we've seen this in MMA for years. You've had guys that will weigh in at 225, 220 and feel like they can compete at the heavyweight division until they meet a guy that's 265 that throws them around. Watch how quickly they drop down to like a 205 to a light heavyweight division.
So here's my response. I'm not in agreement that we need guys, we need more heavyweights that are heavier and blah, blah, blah to equal out the weight discrepancy. Because like you said, all right, a guy who's 220, if he knows how to move, if he knows how to evade and blah, 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 he can, if he's got the power, or even if he's just technical enough, he can win a fight. All right, we've seen it. All right, so that's not my issue. And I guess it goes back to your ultimate point of, had we gotten this fight earlier, would there be more behind it? Because I guess if I was looking at Joshua not coming off of 2 losses, maybe I'd be a little more open to the idea. I mean, ultimately, I look at, watching the Wilder fight, seeing how Fury used the weight, and seeing how he would probably just do that against anybody at this point, because it is, you can say what you want, it's effective. You don't want, all right, I mean, the best thing that Joshua or anybody could do was try and avoid or get out of the clinch as quickly as possible, because you don't want to carry that weight around for as much time. And again, if Joshua's not coming off of 2 losses, maybe I'm more open-minded to this. But yeah, there's no shine to Joshua. I mean, the only selling point you have in the fight is that unification. That's it. But I mean, you look at coming off of this Wilder fight. Fury was 290, I think, by the time it went off, maybe 3-1, somewhere in that area. And a Joshua fight, what's it going to be? 5-1, 6-1? I mean, it's going to be.
Bookmakers will make it close, but it should be a 5 or 6-1.
Let me put it this way, because Joshua is coming off of the 2. The thing with Wilder is you had the draw in the first fight, and then you had the quote unquote excuse in the second fight.
Yeah.
So you could, in the odds and to the better, give the story of there's value on Wilder and Wilder's got a chance. Although anybody who knew anything knew he had no shot. No shot. I thought the minus 110 for Fury to knock him out was a gift.
Yeah, it really was.
So, okay, to somebody who doesn't know anything, okay, for somebody who's just going to go on the Google and look up anything, they're going to look at Joshua and they're going to see, well, he lost the last 2 fights. And Fury's undefeated. There's no way you can sell the low the low line. Okay, you can't make this him and Wilder because, even at 3-1, you'll have guys come in and just put mad money to win a little bit on a Fury, or Fury will just go in every parlay. Yeah. Because it will be that. You'll get I mean, the only people who will bet on Joshua are the guys that literally throw money on dogs to try and make money. Not because they think he's going to win, but just because it's the only way that they can make money. There's no story there. None.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on. We're going to get to our picks. I had a terrible week in college last week. I only had 1 of my 6 hit, and I had about a 50-50 split on the NFL.
You disagreeing with me last week did not go your way.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm not the bookie. But I do want to point out that at one point, every single one of mine looked pretty comfortably like it would hit. And then they just tanked in the second half. Such is life. I'm fine with it. As such, and seeing as I did flop, I am going to give you the first go at picks tonight, and then I will follow up.
Okay. First, I will say that my apologies. I completely forgot to put anything on Twitter this weekend. Anything.
Yeah, fail.
I was like, completely my bad. So these are just early things I'm looking at. I will make sure to put anything official on Twitter. But here's what I've got. I'm going back. If you remember, I took Syracuse last week. Nearly won outright. They lost in OT. I'm going to go back on the horse. Clemson's getting 14 against Clemson. You and I have talked about Clemson a lot this year. It's not the Clemson of old. I mean, Clemson shows flashes of being Clemson. But Syracuse at home, a different team. I'll take Syracuse getting the 14. Arkansas is laying 3.5 to Auburn. Arkansas with a good comeback this past week. I know Bo Nix burned me on LSU a couple of weeks ago, but I can't buy Auburn. I can't. All right, and Arkansas, that defense has been a little ever since the Georgia game. That defense has been a little spotty. But I'm gonna bank on that defense coming back around here on Auburn. So I'll lay the 3.5. I know our scout friend thought you would be on Iowa. You are not, but I am. Iowa laying 11.5 to Purdue. I'm sorry. What does Purdue's offense do for me?
Nothing.
I mean, what they're going to score on Iowa? I mean, Penn State scored a little more than I thought they would. I mean, I didn't think Penn State would get to 20, which they did. Purdue is not.
Yeah, no.
They might get to 10. I think Nick Saban is upset. I think Alabama is upset. So I'll hop back on the first half train. Minus 10.5 first half against Mississippi State. That'll go on Twitter. I'm not going to back off that one. Lane still licking his wounds after the Alabama loss. Gets Tennessee this week. He's laying 3. I think Lane gets back on the horse. Tennessee's not very good. I think Ole Miss can run that up. I know you're pondering if Tennessee is very good. They're not. I mean, they're not.
Ole Miss.
I know Lane can put up points.
Tennessee's put up 62 points, and they've been averaging 40 points since that 62-point game. They can put up points now.
I'll take Lane. I have more faith in Lane.
Okay.
All right. Maybe you just play the over. I don't know what the over is in that. I didn't look at that, but
Yeah, I would play the over. That's a safe bet.
I got to look at the number. Okay, the number might be 80 something.
I will never say Tennessee's a good team, but I think that they have enough offensive power for the over to hit on that.
I feel like I should stop going to this, but yet I still do. So this might be the week that if it loses, I just officially get off the train. But I'm going back to Chip. All right.
And UCLA.
Yep. UCLA is getting 1.5 against Washington.
Take that.
Yeah. I feel like Chip's UCLA is stumbling lately. This could be a good bounce back spot. And the team that beat UCLA last week that I didn't have much confidence in, and I'm sure somebody in the chat will appreciate this, I'm on Herb and ASU this week. They're only laying a point to Utah. So
that's a pick'em game too, if I believe right now.
Like I saw ASU laying 1, so I'm good. I'm good with laying the 1. I think ASU has shown me enough in the past few weeks that I would take them over Utah.
Yeah, that's fair. I would agree with that.
That's all my college.
Okay. I'll give you my college real quick. I did say that I wasn't on Iowa mainly because I was just like, that's too easy of a bet for me. Like I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So if it makes sense to me, I'm sure that like everybody else is already going on it.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but our scout says Utah just had a big win versus USC. Nobody beating USC is a big win.
Yeah, no one cares.
I was like, USC is not labeled a big win.
Is this 2005 USC? Okay, cool.
I was like, Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush on the field?
Yeah, no, nobody cares.
All right, moving
Sam
on.
Darnold.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. You're fine. You're fine. I have 3 this week. Kind of a boring schedule, football-wise for college. Not great, but you're starting to. I mean, we're getting into the first set of bye weeks and everything, so this happens. I have 3 games this week. I've got Oklahoma State plus 5.5 against Texas. We've seen now that Texas doesn't know how to hold on to a lead. I could see Oklahoma State keeping this close, especially after the Red River, showdown, I think it's called now, instead of the shootout, because you can't say that anymore.
I think it's just Red River rivalry. Well, I mean, they've
always called it the Red River rivalry. Yeah,
but yeah, Fox calls it the showdown now. Yes, you're right.
Stupid. Anyway, I think Oklahoma State has a prime opportunity to put it to Texas, not necessarily win the game, but I think that they can cover a 5.5. That could very easily be a field goal game. I think we do see Sark try and step it up a little bit and keep his foot on the gas a little bit longer. But I think that we're going to see a lot of wear and tear from that Oklahoma loss. I think they're going to be feeling that a little bit, almost like a reverse Alabama, whereas Alabama wasn't expecting it and is now going to come out and put a hurting on Mississippi State. I think that you can see Oklahoma State, who is not a bad team by any stretch, come out and put it to Texas again and keep the pressure on them at this point. So I like them as a 5.5 point dog. I also I've got BC as a 3-point dog to NC State. I don't know what it is about this game. I just like that line for them. I'm like, I could see that also being just a field goal game. NC State's been competitive and BC's not bad, so I could see it being close.
BC without their I'm still getting a feel for BC without their quarterback. I don't know where I'm at with that.
I think if the quarterback was in, that would be a no-brainer, but that also wouldn't be the line if he was in.
Yeah, I would say they'd be 7.5 easy.
Yeah. So I do like that still. I think that they'll be okay. And then my last one here, and I always hate it. I don't like it. I don't even know why I'm doing it. But Auburn's a 3.5 point dog to Arkansas.
You're going to disagree with me?
I kind of want to, and I kind of don't. like Arkansas has just really kind of tanked, and Auburn would be a great bounce back for them. But at the same time, just my SEC history playing in right now, there's nothing that Auburn wants more than to beat Arkansas just to get them prepped and ready for the Alabama game coming up in a couple weeks. Like, I could see Arkansas has the chinks in the armor now. We know how their offense plays, and we know what you can and can't do to them to make them ineffective. So Auburn doesn't have the defense that the other teams have had. Bo Nix has been severely underwhelming. But if there was a game where he could pick it up, it would be against Arkansas's defense. So I'm not mad at the line. I think I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was 3 instead of 3.5. But
why? You want the hook?
I do want the hook. I want the hook, but at the same time, I just don't know, man. Like it's a struggle game. I literally have it. I wrote it on a separate note because that's how I went with it. I was like, yeah, I'll take Auburn plus 3.5 versus Arkansas. And then I was like, but I could also go the other way and take Arkansas minus 3.5 too.
So what side are you officially on here?
I'm officially, this is going to hurt. I'm going to take Auburn and pray to God that like I don't get burned by them 2 weeks in a row.
Here
would be nice.
Okay, so now that we're on officially on different sides here.
Yeah.
Okay, I quickly made the case when I gave the pick. I just want to say this. Okay. When Arkansas played Georgia didn't score much in the second half. I know you said it's because they probably took their foot off the gas, but Arkansas's offense didn't do anything. Georgia's got the best defense in the country. Nobody's arguing that. Okay. Last week, okay, Arkansas's defense didn't bounce back, which wasn't a great sign, but we saw Arkansas's offense bounce back, which was a good sign. Okay. Like you said, we're not expecting much from the Auburn offense, so we know Arkansas can put up points. Bo Nix has struggled against anybody with a competent defense. This is why I think Bo Nix allows Arkansas, because Arkansas needs a reason to step up. Okay, they like that Georgia game took a lot of them. That was a big game, and they were out of it very quickly. But and not because Georgia did anything, but because of mistakes. They were out of it very quickly. That was never a game. Bo Nix is a name. This is a reason for Arkansas to kind of get reinvigorated, especially on the defensive side. I think we get the pre-Georgia game Arkansas defense here. So we shall see.
Yeah, I'll give you that. If we see the pre-Georgia Arkansas defense, I think that Arkansas is the way to go. I don't see it. I feel like they're a little bit broken now. I think Auburn's going to capitalize on it, or at least try to. If Auburn gets out to a big enough lead early, I don't think it matters. Okay. So
you're putting your faith in Bo.
Yeah, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But I'm going to roll with it.
Faith in Bo.
Yeah, it's true. I'm going to go ahead. I'll just finish off. Yeah, I was going to say I'm just going to finish mine off here because I only have 3. I feel like Denver minus 3.5 against Oakland is a good bet this week and this week only because of the John Gruden situation.
Let me put it this way. That's the one that stands out to me. I looked at it. Coming off of last week, I don't know how, despite everything going on in Oakland, I don't know how much faith I can put in Denver.
I hear you. I do.
It is a very tricky spot.
Yeah. It's a tough game, and I'm only putting that one out there because of the John Gruden situation.
No, I get all the reasons. I'm just to the listener. Every time one of us gives picks, the other one of us always tries to be contrarian. I'm just saying that is a tricky spot. That could be okay. We talked about it was the Lions, I think, a couple of weeks ago, where I said that's a trap. Don't do it. This might be a trap. This reeks of a trap.
Yeah, absolutely. So that I've got that one. I like Arizona as 2.5-point dogs to Cleveland. For the exact same reason that if they were playing kind of a slack team, I would say go for the slack team. When Arizona has to play a good team, for some reason they actually show up. I like them as a 2.5-point dog against Cleveland. Baker Mayfield not playing well. He doesn't convert well on third down. Arizona's defense is still hot right now, and we haven't seen much out of OBJ. We haven't seen much out of Jarvis Landry. That's been the Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt show.
Do I get Myles Garrett back? That would be helpful.
Well, if you got Myles Garrett back, it would be helpful, but I don't know that it would change too much. I still think Kyler in that offense is gonna do enough to carry that one. I see them winning that outright.
I don't disagree with you. Could be a spot where Kyler finally trips up, but I tend to agree. Not on my list here, but
Yeah. I think there's a very easy, and I have a feeling it might be your lock this week. There's a very easy 4-game parlay out there that I looked at earlier. Just as I was going through, I was like,
You'll see if it is my lock of the week.
I'm not going to say it because I want to see. I want to be surprised by yours. And then the last game I have here is probably the easiest one of the week, Buffalo -5.5. I mean, they are the favorite, but I like Buffalo -5.5. That is one of my parlays this week. Or one of that 4, I would say, is Buffalo -5.5 is pretty easy. I think they cover that.
I will have you know Buffalo is not on the lock of the week parlay.
Wow. Okay. I thought for sure that was going to be on there. I was like, well, at least we'll agree on that one.
I was going to say, actually, a lot of the straight up picks I'm going to give you are on the lock of the week parlay.
Okay.
So I only have 4 picks here. Okay, I'm doing small. Again, these are the look ahead picks. These aren't the official picks, but nevertheless, the only official thing is the lock that I give you. So the straight up bets. Thursday night, Bucks right now are 6.5 against the Eagles. If you can get that under a touchdown, I'll take it under a touchdown. The Eagles have no defense whatsoever. They won that game because of the Panthers last week. The Bucks defense has not been good. That is certainly the issue. But I don't trust Jalen Hurts enough to bring out the deficiencies in the Bucks defense pretty well. The Eagles don't run the football. Nick Sirianni hates running the football. So when Jalen's dropping back 40, 50 times, okay, the Bucks will be able to kind of pin their ears back, play the receivers. So anything, like I said, anything under a touchdown, I'll lay. So 6.5 right now. I touched on it before. I don't know who the Giants will have actually in uniform this week. So that line is 10.5 right now, and I still think it's small. I don't like betting against my team, but this screams betting against the team. I mean, Aaron Donald against Mike Glennon. What else do I have to say?
Yeah. You don't have to say much.
Cowboys are laying 4 to the Patriots. The Patriots defense gives me things that I question. Like they show up in moments that I don't expect them to, and then in moments I expect them to show up, they don't. The Cowboys defense, or offense struggled in the first half against the Giants. I wasn't surprised at the division game. This is not a division game. So I expect them to not have many problems. So I'll lay the 4 with the Cowboys. And I got to do this because I talk them up every week. We saw Lamar last night. Okay, we saw that epic comeback, aided very much by the Colts' inability to kick any sort of football, which apparently was an inability for every team this week. But the thing that I have talked about every week continues to show up, and you can tell me all the numbers from last night about how he threw for 400 yards and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Lamar is sitting in the pocket more and more now. You can see his hesitancy to run the football. And I noticed this last night too. When he runs the football now, he has this thing where instead of just running out and going around, he steps up and then makes the cut. Like he tripped over his offensive lineman last night because he stepped up first and then tried to cut. Like I don't know what he's doing. So the Chargers, my Chargers, riding a high, getting 3 points. I'll take the 3. I mean, what is there for me to see right now that tells me the Chargers can't win that game outright?
Justin Tucker.
If it's a tight game and Justin Tucker is the last one to kick a ball, then yes, that is the only thing. But the fact that the Chargers are still a top 5 defense against the pass. Okay, I know what happened against the Browns last week, but Lamar is not a polished pocket passer. Okay, so unless Lamar is going to suddenly unleash running the football again, which Baltimore is so against, Greg Roman has said, I'm making him a pocket passer. I don't want him to run the football. So if that's the case, why can I not like the Chargers?
That could be he could be passing one off on you by saying that, though.
Oh, no. He has said that since the offseason, and Lamar is not running the way Lamar used to. I mean, that is evident.
Yeah, he's definitely not running the same way for sure. But I felt like they were trying to sell us a dummy a little bit there for a couple weeks because we saw him run a lot early. Like week 1, he was very mobile, wasn't throwing the ball much, and now we see him throw for 400 last night and be that pocket passer and making like passer. Oh, go ahead.
He had to throw for 400 last night because if they didn't move the ball down the field quickly, they were never getting back in that game.
No chance. But what we're seeing was the way that he was running was an inexperienced pocket passer. Like that would be like a Peyton Manning trying to just suddenly scramble out of the pocket type. That's the feel I got from it. That's not what Lamar is, though.
Lamar used to be just pocket collapsing where he doesn't see anything and takes off. Now it's like he wants to move around the pocket before he knows he's got to go. And he's going late. Like he's making the decision to go very late. I noticed it a few times last night. I know people are going to keep telling me I'm wrong. I don't like what I see out of Lamar. I don't. So, all right. So the lock. All right. You got a 3 and a 4 option. Okay. We're going small. Oh, I lied. I thought the Bills weren't on here. The Bills are on here. I looked at the note. I lied. All right. So the 3 is Bills, Bucks, Rams. Okay. That's your 3. Bills, Bucks, Rams. Okay. That gets you plus 122 right now. If you want to add a 4th, that'll bump you to 235. You can put the Cowboys on because I don't think the Patriots will beat the Cowboys.
You think Houston can beat Indy? Colts laying 9.5.
I don't like laying 9.5. That's for sure. I don't like laying 9.5. Here's the thing. You got two big questions. One, what Davis Mills am I getting? Am I getting the Davis Mills I saw against the Patriots, or am I getting the Davis Mills from the couple of weeks before where an INT was guaranteed? Okay? Because did Davis Mills turn a corner? Davis Mills turned a quarter, then that works well for the Texans. Also, that is a horrible loss last night. Horrible. Like, there were no words for what happened last night. What kind of response am I getting? I don't know. I don't know what I mean, like, are they so deflated that they see the Texans and they don't get up for this and they just try and sleepwalk and get a win? You know, are they angered and they take it out? I don't know what I'm getting. So yeah, it's nothing. It's not a locked territory. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Same thing, I guess, then with the Chiefs and the football team.
I thought about putting the Chiefs on there. I thought about it because, like I said, Chiefs schedule is going to get easier. I expect them to start looking more like the Chiefs, and the team defense hasn't been good. So I'm not against you putting the Chiefs on a money line parlay. It might be something I ultimately do. As far as the spread, the Chiefs have not covered a spread since the beginning of last year. The Chiefs don't cover spreads. It is a trap. Everybody falls into it. They are horrible ATS. They are 0-5 this year ATS. They have not covered a spread at any point this year, even in the 2 games that they won. Even in the Eagle game, they didn't cover the spread. So would I lay the 7? No, not at all. Because I could see the team hanging around. The Chiefs defense doesn't stop me. You, me, and everybody in the chat could play the Chiefs, and we could score points.
For sure.
So I believe Heineke can move up and down the field and give it a shot. But do I think that he ultimately has enough to beat Mahomes? No, I feel like it'll be the Eagle game where ultimately the Redskins will make a mistake or two and the Chiefs will win. But I could see it be close. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I have no problem putting them on there. Outside of that, I looked at a couple of other ones that I looked at. I looked at the Bengals. I mean, the Lions continue to find ways to lose. Supposedly Burrow is healthy and is going to play. So, can you put the Bengals on there? Outside of that, the only other one I thought, do you have enough faith in the Steelers beating a rustless Seahawks?
Seahawks?
You know,
I don't.
I don't either. That's why I'm not going near it. But I mean, I'm sure some people will look at that and think that it is a lock. Especially after the way the Steelers looked last week. But I'm not sure that. And then the only other one is, has Justin Fields shown you enough that you would be wary of going against the Packers?
No.
I'm not saying I would either, but
yeah.
And the line even indicates that maybe we should give it a little bit of thought, because not a huge line, 4.5.
Yeah, 4.5's not much. You're going to get what you're going to get out of that game. I just don't trust Matt Nagy's play calling more than anything.
Nobody trusts Matt Nagy.
Yeah. So you asked me, is Matt Nagy going to do anything against the Packers other than lose? And I'm going to say no. Like, that's just how I'm going to look at that. All right.
I was going to say, last thought. The only thing I will say as far as a counterpoint to that is I think Fields has shown that his creativity outweighs Nagy's bad play calling. Like, Fields is doing things outside of Nagy that's letting the Bears be competent.
Yeah. But without David Montgomery still. So
David Montgomery, they won the game last week.
Yeah. They didn't play the Packers last week.
No, but you'd expect Derek Carr to put up points, and he didn't. So,
well, we now know that there was other things going on that could have played into that. We don't know. But
I hope he wasn't looking at the emails.
Well, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, we're already over 3 hours, so
this is very long.
This
is why we need Matt.
I know. We need Matty back to keep us in line, because I feel bad, but we had so many things that we could cover this week. So next week we'll cover NBA. We'll kind of do a little bit deeper dive on some things. But I'm just gonna end it here. We'll save rants potentially for some shorts throughout the week. We've been talking about that a little bit, of giving you some shorter content. But for tonight, I am the Beard Josh. That is the Bookie Dan. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening with us. We will see you next time.
And if you stayed for the whole 3 hours, hallelujah.
Ooh.